Freya snapped at Aurelia, shouting, "What are you doing? Do you want to die?" And the princess just smirked back, saying she had everything perfectly under control. With that many more, it'd get brutally hard, but with this number, they could still take it. At that exact moment, Matsuzami Yuki, he warned Freya about the danger, and then he sprinted off toward it. Attack, he tore through the crowd with his skills and wiped every opponent out in seconds. Freya burst out, "Whoa, so a human can do that." Aurelia stared too, stunned by magic she'd never witnessed. Then she swung around to the protagonist and went, "So you're not a sword?" Rage asked. Yuki shot back, then he shrugged like it explained everything. He was a sage, the kind who instantly masters the top sword skills and magic, so yeah, that's why he knew. The girls clung to him with bright, joyful smiles, and Freya snapped at the princess for getting way too close to the protagonist. He just stared, stunned by how intense their feelings were, and figured he had to tell everyone what happened earlier. And his boss yanked him into the moment in his past life. The moment it hit, he froze so hard he couldn't even accept it. Then later that day, they told him he was totally fine. Fired, those two words hit like a punch from the boss. Fired, and the protagonist's confusion spiraled out of control. Even though he was doing good work, they suddenly pinned the company's slow growth on him, like it was all his fault, and at that very moment. Shock and rage hit him so hard his mind went blank, and he just sat at home unable to answer. At home, he started wasting his days on computer games, muttering to himself as he played, actually narrating his own moves, and surviving purely on insurance and unemployment checks. He's basically on autopilot, eyes off the world, locked onto his character, until he hits the next level and loudly declares, "I'm already hitting the ceiling." Turns out once you really dive in, you can pull off results like that, and this thing is a whole mass. It's a multiplayer online RPG where most people team up and tackle quests together. But he was grinding solo, and in the game his role was the clown. In the game, that profession was basically trash, so brutally low-rated that it almost felt natural. Nobody cared about a player like that, so they ignored him straight up like he'd vanished overnight. A new offer popped up in the system window asking to switch professions to Sage, and two buttons were blinking like a dare, yes or no. The MC froze in shock. What was this supposed to mean? And he couldn't shake the question. Had he ever felt anything like this before? He snapped and decided to take the offer, and the very next second this sage blew his mind because his stats shot through the roof and his power surged so fast he could barely believe it. And at first he figured it was some weird technical glitch, but after a while he just shrugged and moved on. Then he decided to smash the boss. He's no fool to tackle solo, so the protagonist triggered his critical move, 4 nines, and slammed straight into the dungeon boss, shaking him up good. He blurted, "Wow, the blow actually works." And yeah, he'd been right. Nobody had ever clawed their way from clown level to sage level like that. Yeah, he had something to laugh about. He slammed into the monster again, only for it to snap back into its old form after your brutal hit. MC blinked, shocked by how fast he recovered. Sure, that was wild, but then he showed off an even more powerful move. Tech grinned, flipped another ability back on, and erased the boss in one furious run, right when the system. He shot him a quick message, demanding he accept congratulations for making it to yet another world. Then everything locked up. Sparkling light tore open the sky, and the protagonist suddenly started plummeting into some unknown place, falling with a wild, out-of-control rush. Roar, he cracked open his eyes as voices flooded in, calling him the hero and begging him to wake up. He snapped his eyes open and froze at what greeted him. One of the knights leaned in and told him it all went perfectly. Then he finally saw the hero wake up at last. Fabris, the sword hero, threw out a loud welcome and proved he was their true friend. They all lit up the moment they saw him, and the main character blurted, totally stunned. Hero, he scanned the room, locking eyes with every face in the crowd. Fabris tried to get his bearings, where he was, what was happening, and why he was even there in the first place, then apologized for freaking him out, and the guy waved it off. Don't worry, they weren't about to attack. He was inside Oswald's royal castle, and when MC saw it, he blurted out in shock. He's totally clueless still. He insists, "I'm a hero," and insists everyone else is too, and Fabris straight up confirmed every word. Words flew between them, and the mage nodded like it was all crystal clear. He understood it all, spot on, the shield hero katana. Told him he'd need a little time to let it sink in, and then swore to him this wasn't a dream, wasn't some vision. Reality snapped into place, and the hero healer, silly, bright, and smiling, welcomed him like a friend, then quickly hauled him back up onto his feet. and grinned, saying he looked way younger than the rest and that he had to be insanely gifted to pull it off. The girl leaned in and said he was one of the chosen ones. If he didn't get it, he'd better ask. Yuki demanded to know how they'd figured out he was a hero, and Fabris waved him off like it was the easiest thing in the world. He told the protagonist to crack open his panel where every last piece of data would show up in one place, and then the guy proved it on himself right there. He claimed the truth was locked away from prying eyes even if he stood right beside the heroes, so the protagonist nodded, said he understood, and then blurted out, surprised. I was staring at Fabris's stats like they were a goldmine. Wait, why does it end with "but what"? What did private even mean? He took a breath, clenched his fists, and tried activating his stats. When he finally pulled it off, he ran straight to the heroes to confirm it. Yeah, is that really how it went? When the hero stared at his board and went wide-eyed. Right there it said Sage and MC, like he'd somehow ended up confused by their reaction, thinking maybe that's not how it's supposed to be, and honestly, what's wrong with not calling him a hero, especially when the numbers were weird as well? Kate blurted in shock that he'd never heard of something like that, and the astonished young man immediately nodded, agreeing. The protagonist stared into the unknown, thinking, what do I do now? And then the doubt hit hard. A sage was supposed to be unstoppable in this world, unless it was really Fabris, and the thought cut off mid-breath. So politely she smiled, looked him in the eye, and asked if he really wasn't hearing a thing. The surprised knights huddled together, whispering nervously like something huge was about to go down. Maybe there was a mix-up, but that didn't make sense. There was no way they messed it up. They did everything right. But the player they dragged in wasn't a hero this time. He was casting a spell, and that could mean they messed up for real. King Cerberus let out a chuckle full of confusion and snapped, if he's not a hero, then there's only one way to fix this. If he's not a hero, they've got no business even talking to him, so he snapped at the protagonist to get out of his sight, face hard as stone, and the MC just stared back, totally baffled, like, what are you talking about? Can someone tell him what's even happening here? Fabris shrugged like he didn't care, because he truly had no clue. The mage muttered that they were doomed anyway since he wasn't a hero, so none of this was his problem. He'd been praying someone out there would be worthy, then Ketan cut in and bam, their hopes crashed hard because the guy shot back that he'd never even heard the word sage. The protagonist had no clue what was happening. What were they even talking about? He spun toward her and snapped that she explain everything because deep down he couldn't shake one terrifying question. Is he really different from all the rest? The girl who'd just been smiling at him with that sweet, slick voice suddenly sneered, what are you even talking about? Like he could. By status, they basically stamped him as useless, and they didn't give a damn about him at all. MC just knew he'd miss it. He didn't care at all. Then he grabbed his head, cursed under his breath like it was a memory he'd heard before from some past life. He'd just blown through a presentation for the executives, and the second he was done, the director leaned in and demanded, so this is your project, like he already knew he'd have to. Forgive them, but they had no choice. Those orders dragged them into turning him down, and the final plan had only worked to be. Because that's what luck does, right? He couldn't coast, he had to earn at least 10 times more, and they had a whole line of people begging to get hired, and the second he showed up, everyone burst out laughing at him, while any employee who ignored orders was basically dead weight. They stopped caring about him, called him useless, and told him to leave, but now he muttered in confusion, no, don't, because the company's trauma was still raw in his bones. The heroes huddled close staring at him, and Fabris snapped, they're not going to ditch me, right? Cadden shot back, no. Silly chimed in, they should fire him, and she nodded right along because they had no other option. Cerberus snapped with rage, what's taking them so long? If he's useless, then toss him out already. Let them toss him out right now. Those knights snatched him up and snarled that someone like him didn't belong anywhere near them. He wasn't a hero, so they wanted nothing to do with him, and Yuki fought like hell to break free. He was on his knees begging them not to, but the knights grabbed him anyway and hauled him straight onto the exit. They basically tossed him straight through the gate, shouting for him to get out of here and never return, because it was time for him to go home. Rage burned through him. How could they do that after he'd been the one they asked to come back? He refused to meet them face to face, then tore off straight into the city. He drifted around with no direction, and then, boom, they insisted he wasn't a hero, which only makes you wonder if he's really trapped in some other world. It doesn't feel like a dream at all, and he never crowned himself as a hero. He's the kind of guy they call a sage. From the way they talk, it sounds like a disaster, because yeah, that pretty much means he's worthless. He dropped onto the fountain's edge and with a heavy sigh realized the real world and this place were basically the same. He came here expecting way more and got hit with disappointment so hard it stung. So now what? Just live in quiet and hunt for some way back. He suddenly remembered his old job, and nope, there was no way he was going back there, not for anything. He's done messing around, straight up exhausted. He spits out a curse and now he has to make a call, but the real question is, what choice will he make? As he kept going, the protagonist couldn't stop thinking, why was that guy showing up out of nowhere? And just like that, he had no clue what to do next, because this wasn't real life, it was a whole game world. A cool place right when you think everything's calm, one crazy event usually kicks off and flips your whole life upside down. Like saving a princess in the middle of chaos, if only he'd had something like that right then, like on. He caught a gruff man's voice barking at someone to stay put, and a second voice snapped, if she moves, everyone will understand. The protagonist's jaw dropped when he saw Orlia yanked straight into a bandit ambush, like they were trying to burst free from their own grip. A bearded bandit leaned in and whispered, tell me nobody noticed us, right? And his ally shot back, you're good, everything's fine. They shoved the girl into the cart in a rush, praying no one caught them. The protagonist couldn't help thinking, what? Kidnapping or what? He started panicking, brain racing with ideas, anything to do something fast. Would he rescue her right now or pretend he never saw her at all, even though he's trapped in a game? So what if it was fate? He had zero clue how to fight back, and he sure as hell didn't want to stumble into more trouble. He had to come up with a new plan, right then, a stick snapped under his feet, drawing the bandit's eyes straight to them. The bearded man blurted out as soon as he spotted the protagonist. Wait, who is that? Is he tailing me or? MC cursed under his breath. Of course they'd clocked him, so what was he supposed to do now? So tell me, can he actually use that skill or not? Meanwhile, the bearded man snapped at his comrades, blaming them for everything, and the second bandit shot back. So what are we supposed to do? While the third bandit warned that if he started screaming, he'd only bring even more trouble down on them. The second bandit drew his blade, licked it like a threat, and begged the protagonist to let them off. Then they still jumped him and fought back with brute force. They came at him full force, but the protagonist snapped on the god's protection skill and turned their attack to nothing. And the blast tore straight into the opponents. Then, out of nowhere, chaos hit. They started getting ridiculously slow, and Yuki snapped to attention, shocked by how fast their speed vanished. The bearded man snapped at his comrades, yelling why they were stalling. Then they blurted in shock that they couldn't land a single hit on this guy. MC grinned to himself, now he could dodge every strike with ease, and the second bandit snapped and kept ranting, couldn't stop talking. The protagonist thought, wait, what about all three of them? He should attack them back, yeah, but what would that even? With that last skill, it was finally possible. Yuki slammed God's protection back on again. He shrugged and let it go, and the bandits just stared at him, stunned. Then right out of nowhere, everything around him erupted into chaos and started. A surge of raw, earth-shaking energy erupts out of nowhere, and suddenly, power takes form. They scattered the bandits so fast they vanished from sight, and the MCs just stared, utterly baffled. He didn't even understand what he'd done, but somehow it worked. He couldn't forget that girl, so he marched straight toward the carrot. Was Orlia really okay, as she leaned in to stare inside? He shot her a worried question, and the princess, still strapped hand and foot, scrambled to break free from the ropes, then stared at him in stunned silence. The protagonist clocked that she'd come out completely unscathed. He clocked the fear in her eyes, then reassured her fast. He finally told her, it's all fine, I'll free you right now, and then urged her to calm down before panic took over. He'd wiped out those guys and she was safe, so when he finally unfastened her, the girl blurted out her thanks and asked him who he was. The protagonist scanned her from head to toe and clocked every detail in his mind, like he couldn't miss a single thing. She was rich and drop-dead gorgeous too, so Orlia stared at him in shock like, did something happen to my face? The protagonist introduced himself with his full name and she just stared like, what kind of strange name is that? He told her, just call me Yuki and hey, it's a relief you're okay. Then the girl thanked him again like she couldn't stop. MC leaned in and asked her name. She didn't give off the vibe of some run-of-the-mill adventurer. She flashed a smile, told him her name, and then dropped the bombshell. She was the princess of the Verez Empire, and it was an honor to meet him. The protagonist snapped to attention, gasping hard, a princess. She wasn't playing around, was he really hearing this right? The girl smiled sweetly at his confusion and said, yeah, it's 100% true. MC stared at her in shock and blurted out, how did you get kidnapped? Where was everyone? Orlia's cheeks flared as she let out a nervous laugh and said that the truth was in. Back when she was a princess, she basked in pure luxury, but it didn't take long before boredom swallowed the thrill. So she ditched home and chased the world beyond the horizon. She left a note in her mansion, then bolted before anyone could stop her. And those bandits spotted her and closed in fast. Roaming through the pitch-black dark, he got snatched and dragged away. Wanted to hold her hostage, and the protagonist caught it instantly. So that's it, now everything clicks in his mind, and yeah, her story, it's way more interesting than he expected. The princess pulled him in and demanded he tell her who he really was, then she couldn't hide her awe as she said, "You're so brave, weren't you scared to stand up to them?" Confused, the protagonist asked her if he should tell her about himself, and she straight up confirmed it. He paused for a beat, then grabbed the problem in his hands and tried to pull it off. But she understood nothing at all, and that made the whole thing feel painfully weird. Finally, he grabbed her attention and asked, "Should we turn back?" Orlia flat out refused to go back there, no questions asked. The MC watched it all, but then he blurted out, "What if it happens again?" She flashed him a calm smile and promised, "Everything's okay, if anything goes wrong you'll come save me, just like before." The protagonist fired back, but he was already drowning in his own troubles, and if the Imperials even caught sight of him, he'd be dead in an instant. Irelia said, like it's always been, that's exactly how it'd go, until she looked at the moment and admitted this was a whole different beast. After that line, the girl snatched a. He grabbed his hand and leaned in, whispering to him. Now he'd be her lover. Those words hit the protagonist like a punch straight to the soul. He blurted out in shock, what was she even saying? Did she realize what she'd just told him? The princess snapped back, "Yeah, I get it, I've read about it." Yuki's mind was spinning, so they're supposed to report to her father too? No way, that can't happen. The princess blurted it out, shocked, and honestly, she sounded dead serious. Maybe fate lined them up with the perfect hero, but he shrugged and said it was just dumb luck. He didn't do it on purpose, and it made him wonder if princesses were all like that. It's like one of those weird game glitches that shows up all the time, but somehow, everything still clicked into place way too perfectly. The protagonist blurted out that the age gap was massive, and that made him just like everyone else. Orlia burst out laughing. Was he serious? He had to be around 15. Wait, she just had that surprised look, and he couldn't help but think, what is she even saying? He stared at his own hand, and the truth hit. Yeah, he'd been reincarnated as a young man, and that's why those mansion people had been sizing him up like that. The protagonist froze in confusion and blurted, "This is the worst. I can't believe you're like this, and we've only just met." The princess sighed, head dropping, so that's how it is. And she felt it in her bones. This was a fate-packed meeting, the MC thought. Honestly, she could have been a great companion, but taking her along like this is a terrible idea. So he told her he usually plays solo. Actually, he's a loner on the road, but if she tagged along, I wouldn't mind at all. She lit up, bolted forward to hug him tight, and burst out, "I knew it." From this moment on, she's right there with him every second. Thunderous growl tore out of the protagonist's stomach. He nervously admitted he hadn't eaten since he arrived, and Orlia clutched her own stomach, laughing as she blurted out that she was starving too. She slid him some food and grinned, saying she was treating him, and MC, starving and drooling, just shrugged, saying he didn't care. He trusted her to pick the right bites. Back in the royal palace, a knight rushed to the king and blurted that the princess had been snatched away. Then the king exploded, "What do you mean? Who snatched her? Where did they take her? And what did those people they hired tell him when night fell? Because that report said the kidnappers were already defeated, and the person they just shoved out, turns out he wasn't done yet." Zerber snapped up from his throne in pure rage and bellowed, "What the hell is he talking about? That can't be right." The knight crumpled to one knee, shaking with fear, begged for forgiveness, and swore he'd rip back into every detail and investigate it all again, properly this time. As soon as the speaker stepped away, His Majesty snapped his hands to his head and started to wrestle with his next thought. He figured he could bend the Empire's girl to his will, so he hired a pack of bandits to handle the dirty work. The Empire would kick off an investigation the moment she got back home, and if anything ugly surfaced, it could turn into a disaster fast. If the Empire would just step in, then none of this horrible stuff would ever happen. But bringing other countries into this chaos would only make everything spiral out of control. Yeah, they were in deep trouble, like real bad. While the protagonist and the princess dug into their meal, Orlia lit up and said, "This is insanely good. Turns out even ordinary people can cook up magic." The protagonist couldn't even tell if it was truly cheap or if he'd been fooled. But it filled his stomach enough to keep going. Yeah, he was broke as hell, so now he had to find a job. The girl tossed out, "Maybe you should become an adventurer," and the MC froze, "An adventurer, you? So you're saying it's just people who finish jobs and get paid, huh? He can't even fight, right? The princess fired back, that's not true. He beat those bandits, no problem. Maybe the exam wasn't a bad idea after all, because you don't become an adventurer by skipping the test. The protagonist paused, thinking hard. All right, why not? Orlia grinned and invited him to the guild tomorrow. She'd already got it, so he could practically nail it even with his eyes shut, and the girl flashed her ID, confirming she was Orlia Cradle. Then he cut in, wait, are you? She was shocked that she even had that last name here. Then the girl just shrugged and said, it's my pseudonym. If she slipped her real name into the world, boom, she'd be exposed on the spot, and the protagonist knew it instantly. Suddenly, a brutal noise snapped their focus, and a man barked, stabbing a finger toward it. Pointing one way, flames licked the air, then the protagonist froze, completely stunned. Something outside, then the moment everyone cleared the place, they turned and saw the weapons shop blazing in flames. One guy warned, if we don't slam out this fire right now, it's going to get ugly fast. Another resident snapped back, at this pace, it'll chew through the next buildings too. The princess stared in shock and blurted, wait, this looks like the real deal, like an actual fire. As the allies closed in on the fire, a random passerby grabbed an old man who was charging straight into the burning building. And he begged the man to let him go, sobbing, please, there's my grandson. He's still inside, and a passerby looks him in the eye, shaking his head. This is where you have to let go because it's too dangerous and nobody can step in. The old man crumpled to his knees, sobbed uncontrollably, threw his hands over his face, and begged anyone, please, to save his grandson, Orlia. Her voice, thick with compassion, asked the protagonist, can you hear me? He nodded, saying yes. Then the girl leaned in, urgent and fierce, pleading, you have to save that child. She caught her breath for a second, told him to slow down and think it through, then he couldn't stop asking himself, what move would even work here? Climate change. He saw it through the system, God's protection, climate change powers, and the continental common tongue, and he had to ask himself, could he actually control all of it? Could the weather really turn, make it rain? He clenched his resolve and told his companion, I'm going inside. Vowed to save that kid. He actually believed he could pull it off. He stormed into the burning building, and the princess immediately begged him, be careful, don't get caught in there. He burst into the scene and saw everything swallowed by roaring flames, the heat searing straight through him. He spat out a curse because it was unbearably hot. MC roared, if he stays here, he'll scorch himself to death. Then he shouted, is anyone here? And that's when he heard a child crying. Then he clocked exactly where Hans was. He sprinted up to the kid and blurted, are you hurt? Hans shot back. He wasn't, so he followed the old man, only to realize his mother wasn't there. He sprinted back for her, and then he just couldn't walk away. MC muttered, thank goodness he's alive, but getting out of here won't be that simple. The boy stared back with wide, fearful eyes, gripping his cat like it was his last lifeline. Han admitted he was terrified, and the protagonist panicked, firing off options, make it rain or freeze everything solid, but the clock kept screaming, so there was zero time to think. The system demanded he activate the climate change skill. MC shot back, drop the temperature until the flame vanishes. The system blared that the skill was online, and just like that, reality around him snapped into a full stop, freezing in place. Putting out the blazing flames, meanwhile outside, everyone was panicking as the fire finally calmed down and people couldn't stop asking, what happened in there, did that guy do it, and how in the world did he pull it off? The protagonist burst out of the building, gripping Hans's hand, and the whole crowd froze in shock, because the kid was alive somehow. Orlia burst up to him, eyes full of worry, and demanded, how are you? He just smiled and said, I'm fine. She burst out laughing with pure joy, grinning like she couldn't believe it. Then, boom, he's suddenly the coolest guy in the room. Hans burst toward his old man, shouting for him. Then the old man froze, not able to take in what he just heard. He couldn't believe his grandson was safe and sound. Then they crashed into a hug, holding on like they'd never let go, and they hurried off to train. Now go apologize to that old man for coming back into his building. The old man soothed him, whispering calm words while fear still clawed at his chest. Everything felt right, he was still alive, and nothing mattered more than that. The cat. It sat beside the boy, purring like it owned the whole world, and Yuki and the princess beamed as they watched. Hans burst out that he was terrified, and the old man kept steadying him the best he could until the protagonist finally said, it's good. They pulled it off in time, and the girl nodded okay. They arrived right on time before the damage could settle, and the old man spun toward Yuki, choking out an apology for how everything went down. he's the owner of that weapons shop, and for saving his grandson. He cracked a sheepish smile. I'm always happy to help, the protagonist admitted, but then he asked what happened to his shop. The old man just sighed. Most likely it was because Then everything went up in flames. Honestly, he still has no clue why. The old man asked if there was any way he could repay him, and the MC snapped back no. He didn't need a thing. Everything was already falling apart since the fire had them trapped. Even so, the old man couldn't ignore his conscience because he refused to let him walk away and grab whatever he wanted from the shop. The protagonist blurted, "Wait, are you serious?" and then confessed, "Yeah, I told you so, that's amazing." And when the allies came back in, he stared at all the weapons like, "I can't believe it," despite They all survived, so when the princess blurted out something, MC just soaked up that moment with pure gratitude, then grabbed weapon after weapon, because wow, everything in this place was so much it almost overwhelmed him. He studied every detail, jaw tight. Did the sage even carry a weapon, or was it all buried inside his insane abilities? Still, he couldn't wrap his head around how to use everything. One thing was clear though. Everything in this place was top tier. The princess leaned in and asked if he'd uncovered anything, and the protagonist straight up told her the truth. He had no clue what would fit him best. The girl urged him to trust his gut, and the protagonist grumbled, "Intuition, got it," because he needed something way simpler. The old man bragged that his shop was packed with top-notch quality, told him not to stress, and the MC just couldn't stop thinking, so he turned to the old man and asked what he would recommend. The old man couldn't stop asking himself what he could possibly give. Suddenly, he blurted, "Yeah, I'll wait a bit. Right around here," he just knew there was a weapon worthy of where his power is at. The old man tore open the drawer, dug through it, and finally yanked out a sword. Then he started talking, eyes blazing wide open. He stares at it and blurts, "What do I do with this?" Then he asks, "It's the Berserker, the sword of the ancient demon king," and the protagonist carefully lifts the weapon like it might bite. He stared at it again, gasped, and said, "A magic sword, but why?" The old man replied, "Because it's valuable, it's just lost its power and now looks more like an artifact." He yanked the sword free from its sheath and muttered, "It may not be magic, but this design is pure genius, that's all." Stunning, it didn't look like much, but it hooked him instantly. "I just gotta know, can it be turned on again?" Again, out of nowhere, everything flipped. Everyone went speechless. The princess gasped in shock, and that sword started glowing like a signal. The system blared that Yuki's automatic repair skill kicked in. The damage was already fixed, and the repair speed hit a measly 0.2%, and the protagonist practically froze in disbelief. "Wait, is this really his ability too? I can't believe what I'm seeing," she gasped, then burst out, "Wow." The old man grinned and said he was shocked too. Then the MC blurted, "Wait, you're saying this sword picked you?" And the girl answered, "Yep," so they started heading out. The allies bowed and thanked the old man for his incredible gift, and the old man told the protagonist to accept it with full respect. They hugged, said their goodbyes, and the protagonist. He and his companion rode off, and on the road he groaned that he was wiped out, so the girls pushed back, suggesting they find somewhere to crash for the night. The MC told them to hunt for a good room, and the princess replied that they'd better hope they find one. Then, once they finally did, Orlia spun around the room and burst out, "Wow, this place is gigantic. There's room for two." The protagonist immediately thought, "We should split up and sleep separately," and honestly, he'd probably flop on the sofa after he asks Orlia first. He goes, "There's a bed inside the sofa where she's supposed to sleep," and she just smiles back, "Wait, that's so interesting." This time, she'd crash on the sofa, so the protagonist pressed her, "Are you sure?" And she hit back with a firm yes, then warned, "Don't even think about pulling that in the palace." Yuki warned her not to do it, then she cut him off like, "So that's how you." He's itching to get it first thing in the morning. The protagonist is still knocked out cold, fast asleep. Wondered what the heck that burning feeling in his chest even was. Was there another pillow? Nope, there wasn't, and the emptiness felt. Eyes fluttered open, so gentle it felt like sinking into a pillow. He snapped in surprise when he realized Orlia was curled up and sleeping right beside him. Next to him, panic ripped through the air. He shouted, "What is that?" Yuki jostled the girl awake and barked for her to wake up, and the princess blinked open her eyes, murmuring a sleepy "good morning." Yuki snapped, furious. How could she greet him that calmly, and why was she even lying on the bed? The princess snapped that the couch was awful, then scooted in and shared his bed anyway, and when she finally apologized, it sounded like she meant it. The MC couldn't slow his mind down. He blurted it out to her, only for her to fire back, "You can't just do that." crawling into bed with a guy he'd known less than a day. She called it shameful. Her words stunned the girl, who stared and demanded, "Why would you do that? Did I say something weird?" Now steadier, the protagonist finally answered. "No, two people the same age shouldn't share a bed, right? So what's the real problem?" She'd get it if it was some stranger, but it was him, Yuki. "Even if it's you standing there, don't let your guard down, because you never know what's about to hit next." The girl snapped, clearly rattled. "So yeah, that's how it went, and next time she'll be careful." Yuki leaned in and asked if everything was all right, because tomorrow she'd be back on his couch again. The princess giggled and shrugged, "We'll see." She realized she'd been way too careless, and swore she'd never take her guard off around other guys in situations like that again. He spread his arms to crowd her, then warned loud and clear that he could turn violent too, and the girl, shaking with fear, begged him again, "Get violent." How hard did the protagonist press as he approached her, and didn't he straight up admit that he was personally interested in this? At the very end, Orlia stared at him like he'd lost his mind, then asked again, because if he wanted her to, she'd accept him without hesitation. The MC's jaw dropped as this twist hit him, and he blurted out in furious disbelief he'd only been kidding, trying to make her stay on guard, while the girl blushed, apologized, and tried to laugh it off. After what felt like forever, they burst out into the city streets, stunned by what waited ahead. Every resident stared at them, whispering like secrets were spilling off their tongues. Then one man stepped forward and said to N. Then the guy started pointing at the protagonist like, "Yeah, this is the one you chewed out." He's talking way too loud, and the protagonist can't shake that uneasy feeling. I asked him if he honestly thought everybody was staring at them, and he just stared back more like me. Then she jumped in and asked too. Yuki's voice rang with shock like, "What did you do?" And my gut said the worst, he was probably hurt. If she could remember, he told her he'd been invited from another world. Then she snapped back, "Yeah, I remember," and he started. They were hunting for a hero, but the guy they got was a sage, so they dragged him out the door. Princess, shocked, she said she'd heard they were planning to invite a hero, and maybe it was about him, because the protagonist swore, "Yeah, I think so." She took the rumor as truth, and suddenly everyone was talking about him. Yuki snapped, "If it's just a rumor, who cares?" But the real problem was that she was already heading out with him. A voice blurted out in pure shock, "Wait, how is that even possible?" And the reply came back shaky, saying he couldn't promise a thing since most people probably already knew about what happened yesterday's FA. Fire, the protagonist let out a shaky chuckle and muttered, "It's still so damn confusing." He never matched everyone's hype, and when they finally gave him the boot, it felt like they were treating being a sage like it was embarrassing. The protagonist leaned in and asked the shocked girl if she felt disappointed too, and honestly, the guy had a mystery-level skill set no one could even begin to explain. A sage, maybe he'd just been lucky all this time, or maybe luck finally fought back, and how could she possibly be disappointed in him now? He blurted her name out of pure shock, and she didn't pause, she kept going. "Heroes are getting swept up to take down the Demon King, but rumors say it's just a power grab to bulk up the army. So yeah, they're not exactly thrilled that he jumped in." Because he wasn't a hero, he didn't hesitate. He surged in and saved her. Without him, she would have wrecked everything for her father, so the protagonist finally admitted. He was right. Then he said, "Trust me, things would have turned out different for me too if I'd." He hadn't met her yet, and yeah, it kinda stung, but maybe that was a good thing, right? He got kicked out just like that, and the princess blurted out, shocked and furious. "Yeah, all right." She squeezed his hand tight, leaned in, and told him she loved him exactly as he was. So she'd follow him anywhere. He blurted it out shyly, and then just like that he said, "Oh wow, thank you. I really appreciate you speaking up." They're almost at the guild now, and the moment the allies step inside, Maria, the guild administrator, comes straight at them. The protagonist said, "We want to register," and the girl froze in confusion. Then she blurted, "Wait, are you?" The protagonist leaned in and said, "Name S," and before he could finish, it was. The administrator stared at him, shocked, like something was seriously off. Then Maria cut in, "That's not the problem. You only get into the guild if you pass the exam, so tell me, why isn't he doing it right now?" The MC grinned and said, "No problem." The girl kept going, "First they'll learn his magic, then there'll be." She showed him the practical ropes first, then marched him straight to the final exam, where she stopped at an incomprehensible device that left him completely baffled. They beckoned him to slip his hand right into it, and if it squeezes tight, they'll know the test is on, his magic. The antagonist shoved his hand in and demanded, "Maria, say it's right." Then he squinted at the device and muttered that it looked just like a blood pressure monitor. Maria stared at the device, totally baffled. I don't know yet. Then, boom, it started bouncing and vibrating like it was alive. The protagonist shot back in furious disbelief. Are they really trying to break his arm? Orlia panicked for her ally, while Maria, frozen in shock, blurted out an apology and admitted this was the very first time it had ever happened. Still reeling from the shock, she snapped that they couldn't trust machines to do something like that and urged them to move into another room. In the dead center of the room sat a gigantic crystal, and the administrator practically dared the protagonist to touch it. No exact numbers this time like that earlier device, just a color that revealed someone's level. MC figured this device would suit him, because at first it felt just like a game. He pressed his fingers to the crystal and heat blasted his skin. Was it supposed to feel this scorching? Maria stared at the crystal, stunned out of her mind. No way, she can't be the princess. Maria screamed in terror because a nasty crack had split the crystal and the protagonist couldn't stop worrying it might blow up just like last time. Maria answered, voice shaking. Yeah, it's weird, but everything's still good because the color keeps shifting and nothing breaks. Then, after a short while, the crystal finally began. The hero gasped, wait, what is happening? The administrator stared back in shock and blurted it out. This stone's limit is 100,000 magical power. If that crystal shattered, it meant his stats were way beyond what they expected. So to clear the second exam stage, needing 20,000 magical power, he had more than enough, but still, would she actually pass? Protagonist caught himself stunned and thought, wait, really? Orlia gasped when she sat for the test. The pass mark used to be 10,000 magical powers, but Maria nodded and said the rules changed yesterday. Now it's 20,000, not 10,000. With her own MP sitting at 15,000, the princess blurted out, totally baffled. Why would anyone do this out of nowhere, since even an adventurer would struggle to shatter a record like that? The administrator froze for a second, then blurted, I don't know if I should even say this, but just yesterday the kingdom sent an urgent order. The king just slapped new rules on the magical aptitude test, and the MP threshold shot from 10,000 straight up to 20,000. Yuki, you start this order right now. The princess shot back in anger. Why give it to just one person? This can't be right. The protagonist couldn't help but say, yeah, that really does sound absolutely outrageous. Maria snapped at them that the test wasn't over, they had to keep going, and she pushed them toward the testing area. The antagonist said it, and now he's got to square up with someone way higher on the food chain, so the administrator nodded and said he was dead on. Normally they'd cap the job at a maximum C rank, but now get this, an A-rank adventurer is about to jump into the action. The Lakers shoved into the arena and snapped, so you're the one, and the protagonist froze mid-sentence. Even with the king's wrath hanging over him, he still made up his mind to become in. After everything he'd seen, he finally leaned on that courage and truly respected it. The antagonist challenged him to thank him, and the adventurer hit back with pure sarcasm, like, yeah, what a mindless loser. But from the stands, his support team erupted in chants, shouting for Leggers to give him hell, even after the king had already forgiven the guy, because Leggers still shouldn't. The guy smirked and told the MC it was that simple, then challenged him to swing at any moment. A flimsy little blade couldn't touch him, not even for a second, so Yuki snapped into action and unleashed his god's defense skill, which let him read his opponent's next move before it even landed. But he wouldn't be able to, and all that was left was his one last move, grab the feint he needed to pull it off. In that moment he got hit and got taken down with one clean blow. The protagonist surged forward at his opponent, fast as lightning, and struck first. He swung in and Legress just barely slipped the hit. Confusion hit him hard. When did he pull that off? He stared at the guy and blurted, so, how'd you do it? Was that some kind of magic joke? He took one step and in the next heartbeat, he was suddenly somewhere else. He had no idea their kingdom had someone who could pull off magic like that. The adventurers came in swinging and crashed into the protagonist, and Yuki barely dodged in time. Staring at the crater his strike tore into the floor, stunned. A rank strike like that would have blasted him to nothing but ash, no joke. Yeah, it's easy if you can actually dodge it. He had the skill, but it snapped to a stop right in front of everyone. The crowd and the stands erupted in a confused murmur, like they couldn't believe what they just saw. Doesn't he seem every bit as strong as Legress, maybe even a hair better? Orlia burst out, cheering the protagonist on to never quit and keep pushing hard, and Maria stared at her, stunned. The brawlers kept trading blows, but the crowd just couldn't wrap their heads around it, like the protagonist could somehow predict every move before it happened, something no normal person could ever pull off. Ledgers hunched forward, panting hard, and demanded, "Tell me, who are you and what kind of power is that?" The MC shot back with biting sarcasm. Sarcasm again, Ledgers snapped. "So you're saying he's weak?" Maybe he's finally fessing up. Then the protagonist smashes him, and Legrace crumples to the ground with a brutal thud. Right. He stumbled across the floor, just barely snagging his sword, only for it to snap under the force. That pressure hit him so hard he blurted out in pure confusion, "What kind of sword power was that?" Yuki stared at his fallen opponent, shocked. So he really won. For one eerie moment, the whole stands went dead silent. He couldn't believe the duel's ending. No way, right? Who the hell was this guy? The princess lunged at the protagonist, clung to him in a tight hug, and blurted, "It worked, you're amazing, Maria." She stared at what she was seeing and shook her head in total shock. She couldn't believe this, and she never thought he'd pull it off, until MC shrugged and said luck was finally on his side. Right when the administrator said Ligras was one of the strongest adventurers, he snapped into action and struck the enemy at the perfect moment. He beat him and sailed through the exam with zero trouble. Yuki blurted, glowing with joy, and the princess gasped in awe. "Is that so? Miss Murray's way stronger than the royals, so he needs to quit acting shy and start owning that power." He had to figure out what to do for the final exam, because that girl warned him there'd be a real practical battle on the field, and he needed time to prep everything, so she told him to show up the day after tomorrow evening. MC stared at Ligras sprawled on the ground and blurted, "Are you really just going to leave him like that?" Mari snapped back, "Don't worry, we'll handle him, you can go." The protagonist locked eyes with his companion and let out a heavy breath, because beating those two stages felt almost too easy, and Aurelia was already urging him to rest up before the final exam. Meanwhile, Catan stormed into Cerber clutching a report, and the moment he arrived, His Majesty demanded, "So, did you find Yuki's body?" The shield hero said he'd cleared the first round of the exam, then word hit that Ligras had crushed it, and the king snapped, totally stunned, "Wait, what are you talking about? What kind of powers does this guy have?" Catan admitted honestly he was just as lost, so what are they even supposed to do next? Cerberus snapped that he couldn't stand the thought of letting a guy like that slip through his fingers, so he'd think up something, anything. There had to be a way to take this man out cleanly, without trashing his reputation as king, so Kate pitched the idea of hiring assassins. Rage boiled in the king's chest, so why couldn't there be a cleaner plan? Kate snapped that they should show up for the final exam, then make it look like an accident, after all. Before, exams had already claimed casualties, so everyone thought it was normal, and no one would ever suspect a thing. Cerberus let out a sly, thoughtful chuckle and agreed it was a brilliant plan. He'd trust him with the job, but only if he kept his guard up. Catan promised his ruler he'd make it so nobody could ever track where he'd gone. Then His Majesty stared into the far horizon and slammed out his declaration. Now he's about to wipe this guy out for good. While Aurelia sprawled in a steaming hot bath, bliss hit her like a wave. This one felt even better than the one. She was in the palace, sure, but it still wasn't half bad. She'd heard that a hot bath could melt away the fatigue. Fatigue hit hard. She should hand the protagonist one too, because he's just sitting on the bed right after the fight with Ligras. He couldn't shake the thought that maybe that sage wasn't as weak as everyone claimed, maybe not hero fit, but still far stronger than they said. He still had enough grit to stay alive and chase his dream of becoming an adventurer, and before the final exam, he knew it was time to test his skills for real. He realized he could tap into system settings, God's protection, and even the mysteries of climate change. When the Continental Common Language and Magic Barrier popped up, the MC stared in shock, because that new skill hit him out of nowhere. Where did it even come from? The name tells you everything. He needs to try it right now. He slammed the magic barrier into action. His skill should have kicked in and stunned everyone, so why didn't it? That didn't make sense. Just then, Aurelia burst out of the bath and he blurted out a wish for her light steam. She thanked him, then leaned in and asked, "Want a bath too?" If he said yes, she'd slip in and rub his back. Right when the girl was about to step up to him, she suddenly shrieked, crumpled to the floor, and started rubbing her head in pain. The MC shot her a nervous look and blurted, "Are you okay? What's going on with you?" The princess fidgeted with her towel and her eyes widened. "What happened?" she asked, totally lost. He just crawled out of the bath, so let him explain why she slammed into an invisible wall, and then the protagonist shot up from the bed. He reached the spot and froze, an invisible wall. Now it all clicked in his head because he finally understood how that power worked. The system told him he could set a code word and wipe out the barrier. Would he dare? Yuki stared in shock. a code word so his comrades could walk right in without a fight. He told the girl to say Hurikagoma, and she stared at him in shock. Wait, what am I supposed to say? What is that? She kept saying it anyway. To realize she could finally pass with zero trouble, then MC blurted that it was all thanks to a magical bear. With that single word, she could shove past the defense just like that. The princess nodded at him and he was cleared. She clocked him the way she always did. He was deep in some brand new, thrilling trouble. The next day, they showed up for the exam and Maria leaned in, telling him, "Now I'll spell out the final rules. You're staying here for the night, and during that time we're going to try to take you down. Your job is to defend yourself." Shocked, the protagonist blurted, "That's it?" And the administrator snapped back, "Yeah, your attackers are adventurers above rank C, so keep your eyes peeled." The exam would finally end tomorrow at 6 a.m., and until then, nobody knew who would hit him, when it would happen, or how they'd pull it off. She started telling him goodbye, promising she'd swing by tomorrow to announce the results, and Orlea shot her comrade a burst of good luck. Alone at last, the protagonist took a deep breath and immediately built a barrier before anything else could happen. He popped the second-tier magical berry to life. He cranked the level up to 2, praying something would change, anything, because if it worked, it'd save him a ton of time. He struck a match, boiled some water, and sat by the flames like, "I never thought I'd spend the night alone in this world like this." That night, assassin knights flooded the exam site. One of them strode up to the commander and snapped that their target was nowhere to be found. The commander only nodded and said, "All right, we start the mission." The knight shot a look at the protagonist, eyeing the guy by the fire, and then said, "I can't help but feel a little sorry." The commander ripped into him, saying he didn't even deserve pity, because word on the street is he's a traitor and a deadly threat to the king. One of the assassins snapped, "That's your take, but I'm telling you, it was him who kept the last hero from summoning." His partner fired back, "Why would that kid do something like that?" And the commander cut in. "This mission was handed down personally by King Cerber, so yeah, this kid's got layers," and the knight said it like it was a fact, and then he cut off mid-sentence. The commander snapped an order to keep the soldiers on edge, no relaxing, and drilled into them that their real plan was to blindside him with a strike from behind. The boy's actions were nowhere to be seen, and then one of the knights burst in to tell the commander, "I'm here to report." The commander snapped, "So what's happening? Have we been spotted?" The knight leaned in and snapped, "No, trust me, let him see it with his own eyes." With that, the knight whipped a knife straight at the protagonist. But the blade slammed into an unseen force field, ricocheted back, and clattered to the ground. The commander blurted, stunned, "Could this really be a magic barrier?" The knight stared in disbelief like, "How is that even possible? Magic, something that vanished ages ago, was back." The commander finally spoke, but how was he even supposed to put what he saw into words? They won't believe him, but that barrier isn't breaking with plain magic or some sword swing, so why is he staring at the knight like he's got no clue? The commander barked, "This is the king's order, mess up and you're done, mistakes aren't allowed." The knight had to be ready for anything, because with a powerful weapon in hand, he couldn't stop wondering if they were really about to unleash it. The commander confirmed his hunch, yeah, he was right. If that wasn't the case, they'd be finished. Then he snapped an order, "Get the cannon ready now." His assistant warned him that even the toughest enemy didn't deserve this kind of overkill, but the commander just smirked, "Don't stress. We're not using it to hurt them. We're using it to smash the barrier." Moments later, his subordinates rushed to the commander and reported, "Everything's set, preparations are finished." The commander barked good and snapped the whole squad into position for the attack. He shouted for them to open fire, and the gunners unleashed a brutal torrent of destruction. The observer stared in shock and told the commander, "It's all for nothing." The barrier never even flinched, and their targets acted like none of it was happening. The commander couldn't wrap his head around it, thinking maybe that one strike didn't cut deep enough. Keep hammering them, focus on one point and don't let up. The commander's assistant asked, all shaky, "Is everything okay?" And right there, as far as he could see, nothing had changed at all. The commander shot back that the royal weapon wasn't weak at all, it was legendary, so victory was just a matter of time. Meanwhile, the protagonist barrels forward, completely clueless about the danger creeping up on him. He stirred the soup he'd just cooked, then leaned in like a gambler. Was it actually tasty? One bite in and his eyes lit up. Somehow that messy pile of random ingredients turned into something seriously good. After stuffing himself, Yuki rubbed his belly, grinned, and muttered, "I'm full, but do you think they'll really go after him?" He told the commander, "I can barely hear anything, it feels like the world's gone silent." The commander shot back, "Is that really true?" Like it could be happening, and just for a second it was easy to believe. Matsuzaki let out a breath and said that once he finished eating, sleepiness was creeping in fast. Then he stretched, grinning, and claimed it didn't feel like a test one bit. The commander barked at them to run it back, to dig deeper, because they could do it if they just pushed harder. He warned the commander one more time. Every round was getting burned through faster than they could replace it. The commander snapped in shock, "No way, that can't be true," and his mind raced. He'd used up every single fresh cannonball, so how could they have even punched? So what kind of guy was he even? He demanded answers. What were they planning now? And when he got the reply, it hit hard. The plan had collapsed, so they had to report everything exactly as it was. He didn't want to say it to the king, but the truth hit hard. He wasn't just strong, he was packing power even beyond the heroes. The commander snapped around and told him, "If we can't pull this off, then the heroes will." He didn't buy that they'd soften their folksy ways just because they were forced to work their tails off, and he told him he agreed. The commander barked, "Retreat now," and ordered them to vanish without a single trace, and when everyone nodded along, nobody dared lift a finger against him. Even worse, Matsuzaki completely missed them. Then the next morning hit. They stormed out to find the protagonist. Orlia swore he was around here, and the tracks told the truth. A full-on battle had erupted during the night. Orlia blurted, "I just hope MC is okay." Then she smashed into something, stumbled, and demanded, "What is this?" It felt like she'd hit a wall out of nowhere. "Hold up," Orlia gasped because she felt it, an invisible wall. Yeah, then it was him. She remembered the way he'd told her, clear as day, that it was a magical barrier. If she wanted in, she'd have to speak the words. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "Hurikagoma. All right, it's done now, they can finally go." She froze in confusion, then snapped back and thanked her. He shoved through the barrier and Orlia spotted him and breathed out in relief. She shouted that he was fine, then rushed up, yelling his name, telling him he had to wake up. MC jolted awake, rubbed his eyes, and muttered, "Oh, it's that." She swore it was the first time anyone had ever nodded off during this exam, so he scratched his head and said nobody showed up, meaning he figured, "Guess I'll take a nap." She spilled the results to him and shock lit up his face. Then he snapped that she needed to stop, because none of this was on him when their guys didn't even show up. She shot him a shocked look and insisted, "You've got to hear me out till the very end," but by then they'd reached her goal and still couldn't reach him. Turns out they've been slamming into an invisible wall all night, and he probably didn't even realize it until the bear showed up. MC stared at the barrier, saying, "So this is it," and when he turned back he felt his stomach drop. Was this really about to be a fight? He snapped his barrier up fast, like the battle was already coming. So that's why he hadn't heard a thing. She pressed on, and then it hit him. His attacks were flying under the radar too. She nudged her glasses into place and kept going, yet he still found a way to block her from getting through to him. Since it was required for the exam, she lit up and congratulated him for crushing it and passing. MC swallowed his pride, stammering that he hadn't done a thing, so how could he possibly deserve it? Orlia wrapped him up in a hug and screamed with pure joy, "Yes. You can," she said. "He'd cleared every stage and this is his card now. Go on, take it." She grabbed the card, praised them with a sharp, "Well done," and Orlia lit up, saying they could finally jump into the quest. John C. couldn't believe how much had blown up since he got fired, but somehow he'd carved out a new way forward, and now he was ready to chase career success like never before, dreaming of a calmer, steadier life at last. The plane dropped its car near the capital, and Orlia broke into a smile, thrilled that the trip to the destination wasn't a long haul from home. Matsuzaki stared at the book and said, "Yep, this is a quest built for a beginner adventurer." Then she snapped back, "But is this a brutal first job?" She pointed to the task. Hunt down the ingredients across the northern Karlan plain: green medicinal herb 200, red medicinal herb 200, and a sacred flower 400. He kept staring at that book, shook his head, and said he'd already agreed to 10 requests just like this, so they'd handle them fast now, right? She grinned and nodded, saying everything would work out, and then he said he just needed to track down the perfect spot for everyone to gather. He figured the guild had put together a beginner's guide. He spotted something and blurted out that it all made sense, like it clicked instantly, then pointed to a Karlan grove nearby. He told her to head for the forest, and she stared at him in shock. The forest? Weren't we supposed to be in the fields? The MC points to the page and goes, "Right here, medicinal herbs are usually hiding in the forest." It lists green and red herbs in the fields too, but then admits the forest is where they're most likely to pop up. while the sacred flower grows just as much in both places, feeding on magical power like it's drinking it. He swore that sacred flowers drink magic and live off it, then leaned in, certain the forest was crawling with even more magical creatures and power, so they should head there right now. He called out to him, shaky but urgent, and said, "The only problem is she still hasn't tested that new weapon. What if something brutal is out there waiting, and the moment she swings, it goes from bad to terrifying?" Forrest, he shrugged and told her, "Don't stress, she's fine," and the book backed him up. There aren't any. Monsters are swarming around the capital, and to make it worse, they're pushing against his magical barrier. Even the guild's examiner couldn't crack it. She just scoffed, saying she'd hide behind it, and that was the end of the discussion. Right, fine. Harlan Forrest, she'll take his word for it, no questions asked. They were miles into the forest when he finally said it. He nodded as he thought it, and she chimed in, "Yep, there are tons of herbs." He told her to start grabbing from the edges, and she snapped back, "Got it, I understand." It felt like they were headed for a picnic, so yeah, they should have brought food with them, and the MC couldn't shake the feeling that magical creatures kept trying to ambush them whenever they got the chance. But thanks to the barrier, they never even got close. He jabbed a finger at them and said, "See, they won't dare stick their noses near this." She glanced over and nodded like he was 100% right. MC realized they'd totally gotten carried away, stuffed the bags with herbs, and then just hated the idea of tossing it all, so they scrambled to figure out how to haul everything they'd collected. An info box popped up, and the moment it did, he felt swamped, so he asked, "Can I buy more slots for my stuff?" It hit him like a shock. Yes, no, then he stared at it and said, "So I can buy slots, right?" She called him over and snapped, "Listen first." The bags were nearly bursting at the seams. He shot his hand up into the air. She froze in shock, then blurted, "What are these?" And as she stared, he just looked at her like he couldn't believe she didn't get it. "These are item slots, basically a pocket dimension where he can stash stuff safely and nothing spoils. Those oil containers are stored there and she can pull them up anytime." Then she gapes at him like he's straight up incredible. He said, "So they've grabbed everything, but can they really go back?" She answered, "Yeah," and admitted she had this weird, gut-deep feeling, because they'd hauled in so much, yet their hands still felt empty. He told her they'd better sprint back to the capital before sunset, because nobody knows what hunts in this forest after dark, and she nodded, saying the whole guild would be stunned. Suddenly the skies turned on her, storm clouds crashed in, and the weather went wild. He stared up at the sky and blurted, "Look at those lightning bolts." But the sky had been crystal clear a second ago, and now those streaks were firing with zero gaps, like there weren't even supposed to be intervals between them at all. "It's like someone screaming right in your ear." She jolted with fear, pressed against him, and begged, "Even through this barrier, you can hear it that clearly." "What is it?" He blurted, "I'll go check," and asked if she'd stay right here. She shook her head no, saying she wanted in too, even if it meant facing whatever monster might be waiting. He warned them to stay back, don't crowd the area near the capital, because it's dangerous even at a distance. Deep inside the wild thicket of the Carlon forest, where danger waits in every shadow. Silly told him, and he didn't hesitate, he was 100% sure. A winged blue-eyed dragon had swooped in right near the capital. Vriss shot back that there was nothing anyone could do. This was an order straight from the Emperor himself. And yeah, if we're being honest, he didn't even fully buy it. Whoever showed up there, the sweetheart would drop them with a single punch, then she'd fling her arms around him, act terrified and squeak, "Scary creature." Others he burst out laughing and told them to trust him. Cotton stared at them and said, "So the two of you aren't here for a picnic?" Fabris laughed that his forest wasn't home to any real threat, so what were they even scared of? Then he felt wolves closing in from right behind him. He barked out a shout. This wasn't even a warm-up, and then he wiped out 2 wolves with one single strike. The wolf was totally fine. He even insisted it didn't go down from a single hit. So yeah, it turns out he's not as simple as everyone thinks, and honestly, that's hilarious. He swung at him again and barked, "So how's that sound?" Silly latched onto him again and gushed that he's irresistible. Meanwhile, Fabris snapped that if they don't wipe them out with the first strike, then they'll still be the weak ones. He shrugged and added, "Yeah, I just don't know." Magic power is soaring in this place, and if that blue-eyed dragon is the source, it's only going to get even more intense. Silly stuck out her tongue and warned that whoever dared step out, Fabris would wipe them all out, and Fabris nodded right along with her. He called it a bold move, and he was betting everything that it would land. They trudged up to the mountain door and he demanded entry. "I need to." As the dragon sealed itself inside the sanctuary, it growled that there was nothing left here. She burst into laughter and said he was probably just scared for Breeze. Then he told her she'd got a sharp eye. Katten told them to at least rip their eyes off the spot and look around. Right then he spotted it crack, the stone slab split open, and a wild black light burst out like it had been waiting. She demanded what was that sound, and he grinned, saying they'd imagined it. A dragon can't come back from the dead. Then a shadow slithered into view, and it looked exactly like the same thing. He stared down the dragon and yelled, "This is unreal." A giant dragon burst into view right in front of them. He blurted, "Wait, is this the blue-eyed dragon?" He told Fabris this is clearly not going according to plan. Then he stared at him and demanded answers. What's he rambling about? They were the heroes together, no one could beat them. Then he leaned in and told Katten that he had stopped the dragon's rampage. Katten grinned and demanded the truth. Was he trying to kill it? Yeah, he had to. There was no other way. He said a shield hero was exactly what he needed for moments like this. Told me to shut up because who could hold off a dragon alone? Then the beast lunged from behind and blasted them with flames, forcing them to try something before it swallowed them whole. They tried to dodge it, but they couldn't. She shrieked that she had zero time to recover, and he snapped back that there was no way they could beat a monster like that. Who would dare let him slip away on his own? He was literally running for his life, so Fabris stared him down and blurted, "What are you thinking?" Damn it, he's about to wipe every last one of them out, right here and now, and he's got to act fast. The dragon blasted up from below, and then slammed down on him like a living meteor. It swiped across him with its paw, clamping down like a warning. Then he said, "My." His body wouldn't listen anymore. Pain slammed him so hard he thought, "I'm done, I'm dying." The dragon locked eyes with him and lunged like it was seconds away from tearing him apart. He blurted in terror that he must not come any closer. Matsuzaki snapped that he mustn't get any closer, because that moment was about to tip everything. Vibrations hammered the air even out here, and Aurelia shot him a worried look. "Are you okay?" He just shrugged and said, "Who knows, but we'd better brace our minds." They burst into a cave. He blinked, baffled. "Wait, aren't these the heroes from that Ka? What on earth are you doing in a place like this?" She snapped, staring him down. He nodded, and right then a dragon burst into the scene in front of them. Then it growled, and MC snapped, "Is it? Is that dragon really here?" She ducked behind him and blurted, "This is insanely dangerous. We've got to run right now." He pushed ahead and snapped, "Yeah, don't mess with him right now." She trailed after him, scared out of her mind, begging, "We've got to get back to the capital fast." Fabris spotted him and blurted, "That's Matsuzaki Yuki, right?" Then shrugged like he didn't care who anyone was. MC said that bastard talked way too much. Then he demanded Aurelia help him save the man, because Aurelia stared back and asked, "Can you hear him? It's Fabris, the hero of the sword. If this keeps up, Barty's whole squad is about to get wiped out." The dragon seethed at him, then snapped forward and blasted him with a roaring wall of flames. Those flames never even got close. This shield kept them safe. And the shield splintered, and the MC swore, "Damn, this is bad." The magical barrier he was betting everything on just got shattered. The dragon lunged in for another strike, and the MC cut in. "Wait, this is bad." He doesn't have a second to rebuild the barrier, so he snapped at her to stay back. He yanked his sword free, and she nodded like, "I get you," just as the dragon snapped back and attacked him again. MC snapped, "Damn it, he's not getting defeated that easily." Then he whipped up a parry and cut in with. No wonder it was a legendary magic blade. Unfinished or not, it still parried that brutal attack like it owned the fight, and Fabris couldn't believe what he was seeing. The dragon snarled, "Aren't you a sage?" And Matsuzaki froze, "Yes." The dragon pressed on, "Oh, so you're one. They've been waiting for you." MC snapped back, "I need to wait," because he didn't even know the guy. The dragon told them, "They call me the winged dragon of the water mantle." Then he admitted that about 1,000 years ago, he took a wound so lethal in battle that he had to lock it away to heal, only to sleep through a long slumber. For ages, dragons have hung around sages who can outmatch them in mind and muscle, like him. And when Matsuzaki answered, he shrugged off the whole dragon hype, saying he didn't care about them, didn't need their comfort, and wasn't all that attached to him either. The dragon promised, "If you kneel and take me as your boss, I'll hand you powers so massive you'll shake the world." MC paused, stared ahead, and declared, "That's the real kind of power." Then he leaned in and added, I'm totally fine living my life and smiling every day. "Treat a subordinate like a pet, huh?" he said. Then he jabbed a thumb at the dragon because that massive size was totally an issue, but the dragon just told him, "Don't worry about it." The dragon roared like a thunderclap. Then suddenly, it shrank and transformed into a tiny baby dragon. Matsuzaki blinked in shock. What a baby dragon, and that little dragon clapped back like only its master could, dead sure of his craft, same power locked in, just shrunk down into a smaller body. He landed right on Orlaya's head, flashed a grin, and said it was a pleasure to meet her, then she froze in shock. MC blurted out, if he's really that small, we might even get away with calling him a pet, then shot her a look and asked what she thought, then she answered. Honestly, a legendary dragon as a pet is a bit too much for her, but if he's not bothered then fine. Matsuzaki said that's it, settled, then he forced a grin and declared, I'll keep him right here and make sure he stays happy. Cub burst with joy and blurted, by the way, I'm sorry for how I treated my comrades. The MC paused for a breath, then declared Orlaya was totally fine, no injuries, no harm, just safe and sound. The cub shook his head and snapped, no, I'm talking about those guys over there. Then he jabbed a finger at the heroes. Panic hit them hard and Matsuzaki snapped that they weren't comrades at all. So he didn't have to apologize, he recognized them on sight, sure, but they weren't friends at all. If anything, it was the exact opposite. They were enemies. Then the cub burst into the air beside MC, who was totally baffled as Fabris snapped, what are you even saying? He'd completely forgotten how they'd met in the castle. Then the cub shot up to him and said, so these are the Lord's enemies. Fabris snapped that he wouldn't, then the cub asked if it should finish them off, and right behind it, a dragon crashed into view in its true form. Fear ripped through them and Fabris snapped that he needed them to wait, he'd do anything to make it work. He asked if he really wanted to be a hero, then promised him the spot as the leader of the Bardi Hero Squad, right now. Honestly, that was a pretty sweet deal. Right? MC froze in shock, then he snapped back, no way, not happening. After all, he was the one who kicked him out, so did he even remember what he said? He replayed what he'd said, a useless guy like me doesn't belong here, right? He nodded along and demanded the guy get kicked out right away, and she slammed it even harder, you're not worthy to be here. At the very first meeting, the MC clapped his hands together, called him useless to his face, and asked if Fabris really thought that could be undone so easily. Then Fabris just nodded, admitted he got it, and took the words right back. He wasn't a bad guy at all, he truly believed it from the depths of his heart, so he had to step in and help him. Matsuzaki reeled as she realized just how selfish she'd been, and suddenly it wasn't even clear who the real villain was. He shot back, okay, I'll leave these guys alone for now. The baby dragon fumed, but at least he understood. The heroes erupted in cheers, and MC grinned, saying he had a few conditions. He has to shut down every rumor and every slander that's been running wild across the kingdom, then square up and apologize for the way they've treated him. Fabris said he'd love to do it, until he reminded everyone he still needed the king's approval and the whole deal that came with it. Matsuzaki said, so you'd rather die right here and now than do a simple task, right? Either we sort this out or that baby dragon will keep growling at him, and when Fabris yelled that he got it and would fix everything, he still insisted they had to be spared. MC said it was time to head back to the guild, and Orlaya snapped, so what's wrong with those heroes? He promised they'd be left alone, and honestly I was cool with that. If anything went sideways, help would show up. That baby dragon let out a desperate cry for its master. Matsuzaki shot up and snapped, what? But the hatchling snapped that it needed a name, because without one, it couldn't be any use to its master. He paused for a beat and said, the name is the Winged Water Mantle Dragon. Then he shrugged, so maybe we call him Svi. He apologized and admitted it took him a while to think of something cool, and Svi lit up, saying, that's an awesome name. And he loved every second of it, so Matsuzaki shrugged and rolled with it, because they didn't just blast through a stack of guild quests, they even snagged the Winged Water Mantle Dragon as a pet. And on top of that, they got the hero to promise he'd restore his name. Just when you think it can't get wilder, the very first day of adventuring hits you with one surprise after another. Tell me that isn't wild. After a bit, the MC popped up and said he was ready to turn in the items for the morning quests. Then she leaned in and asked, okay, what's the quest objective? He had to go this way, so where were the items themselves? Matsuzaki told her to hold on for a moment. He lifted a panel packed with every single one of his items, and the girl's eyes went wide. She blurted, is this magic and what's the quantity? MC said if it was about numbers, it only meant the 10 accepted quests plus 2 or 3 extra sets on standby, and she made it clear that taking 10 quests in the morning and cashing them in before the day even ended was totally unheard of. But getting those there somewhere else or hiring a bunch of other adventurers would have burned a hole in their pocket, so she mulled it over and finally said, I guess we just have to trust it. He nodded, then said, So does that mean the quests are done? She nodded, then snapped, yeah, but we need to count the numbers precisely. She asked to take a look at his guild pass and he totally says it's her. So that means he's Matsuzaki Yuki, right? If that's true, his partner must be Oralaya and the MC wants confirmation. Is it actually that way? Right? She inched closer, buzzing with excitement. Yeah, the same guy who fried Ligress with a lightning blade, breezed through the last trial without even throwing a punch and somehow gets called an insanely handsome rookie. And when she leaned in, Matsuzaki just scratched his head and mumbled, "Oh right." She claimed she was totally exaggerating, but that didn't matter. Finishing 10 tasks would let them both climb to D rank, and she cheered them on like they'd already won. Then she added, "Oh, by the way, that plush toy was painfully adorable." She even jabbed her finger at SVI, sprawled out asleep on MC's head, and asked where you could buy one. Matsuzaki blinked like, "A plush toy?" Then caught himself mid-thought, wait, that's what she means. When SVI's name hit the air, MC's heart sank. What if anyone besides him and Oralaya uncovered his real nature? That thought screamed trouble, didn't it? Maybe SVI's putting on an act to stay still, hiding what he really is, because getting mistaken for a toy is the perfect cover. Matsuzaki blurted that it was actually handmade. Wait, are you serious? Handmade? She gasped, stunned. She begged him to make one for her too, then she flipped the script and changed it. She shrugged and said maybe later, then flashed a bright smile. Yep, she'll be waiting for you. Yeah, same. They tore out of the building and MC muttered that they almost outed Svi for what they really were. Oralaya admitted she'd been getting just as rattled, watching it all unfold. Matsuzaki pressed him and yeah, C knew the silence was on purpose, so he nodded yeah, and he blurted, "So, are you okay?" And the MC scooped him up right away, then told him, "Yeah, I'm doing great." He leaned in and begged him to keep showing that side in front of people too, and SVI lit up with a huge, "Got it." Matsuzaki figured it out fast. Once they cleared their first advanced and adventure rank tasks, he asked, "You guys hungry?" Then suggested they hit the tavern, and SVI immediately chimed in that he was starving too, so Oralaya grinned and said she'd cook something up. And just like that, MC rolled forward with a brand new, dependable partner named SVI. His whole adventure life was already screaming excitement. Mount Carlin, monsters circling them, and MC telling SVI, "Don't worry, we'll be fine." She swallowed hard and admitted this was their first cleanup quest, and the worry in her eyes said it all. "Sure, but don't you dare relax," she snapped, still sounding determined. A pop-up window flashed, "Skill, Magic Eye available. Do you dare use it?" MC's jaw set, "Magic Eye." Then another prompt hit, "New skill." The name sounded cool, but nah, it wasn't for him. It looks like it can curse anyone it locks eyes on, so he should check it out. Then, boom, an info window popped up and named the creature Red Wolf. Level 3 class monster skill, Flame Fang, the bite of pure fire. Matsuzaki nodded like he finally got it, some soft, understanding assessment. And yeah, this wolf didn't feel like the ones you stumble across out there in the forest. They should watch out for fang strikes. She nodded yes, then SVI started to say they were C. The wolf lunged at the MC out of nowhere, and the moment it hit, he fought back with everything he had. She froze in place, completely trapped, like her body had shut down mid-step. The wolf launched at her in a terrifying pounce. She slammed her sword into it and nailed the mark perfectly. They slammed back into the brawl, fighting them over and over. Matsuzaki grinned and said the hunt was going perfectly. So yeah, he asked her how it was going and she told him she was doing great, like she was already getting used to that new weapon. He leaned in and grilled SVI, asking if these monsters were the only horrors roaming this area. He nodded, certain about it, but then he felt it. There was a slightly stronger monster lurking just ahead. MC whipped his head toward the noise, and there, tangled in the vines, was a girl. Oralaya blurted out his name and he snapped back that they had to rush right now, before it was too late. She snapped that they had to find a way to get rid of those vines. Matsuzaki just told her to hang on. The MC didn't hesitate. He swung his blade and cut the vines clean in half so they could finally save her now. He blurted, "Damn, his regeneration's faster than I ever expected," and she snapped back, "This way they'll never finish." Vines shot out and wrapped around Oralaya as she let out a quick apology. He blurted out an apology the second he got caught. What the hell was happening? What is it doing? Matsuzaki snapped, saying things were already getting bad and even Oralaya got snagged too. He turned to him and asked straight up, should he help? Matsuzaki shook his head and told him to wait just a moment. If the enemy's a plant, then somewhere out there, a main trunk is calling the shots, steering every branch. So the simplest move? To smash the body itself, so he leaned in and asked if he could take the hits, pull the attacks off him, and give him enough time. So I shot back that he'd go for it. He spun toward the vines and barked, "Come with me." MC snapped that while time still lived, he had to track his body, so where was it? He fired up the magic eye and boom, a glowing info window popped. Name Man-Eater, branches. Monster race, skill capture. Name the Man-Eater, body of a monster race, skills honed for savage life, then it regenerates its branch, reeking with the smell of rotting fluff. Ahead he stumbled on a giant flower with a mouth, and when it stared back he blurted, "What did I find?" in shock. But before those vines can strangle him, he has to reach the center, so he slams into action with the divine protection skill. He lunged at the giant flower, and when she snapped that the vine's movement had stopped, they both tumbled down to the ground. She blurted that they'd saved her. Oralia then snapped that it was right on the edge. SVI finally asked if they were both okay. She thanked him for saving her life, then she asked, "Wait, what are your names?" MC grinned and said, "Call me Matsuzaki," and he finally added, "This is Oralia." She declared, "I mean initial, out of the Elven Village." Oralia said, "Elven Village, its way out from the capital," and the MC shot back, "So why are you here, of all places?" Ine snapped that more elves from her village had gone missing lately, and the truth hit hard. Bandits had been snatching them for sale and slavery, so she charged after that crew as they tried to haul her comrades away. But every step forward went bad fast. She got ambushed by that monster, her horse got killed, and when she finally tried to run, she was caught and left barely alive. Oralia demanded to know about elf slavery, and the answer hit hard. They're either sold to perverts who crave non-human bodies or thrown into brutal forced labor. Ine nodded and told her straight that slave trade is banned across every country, especially in the Kingdom of Oswald. Whispers about an underground slave ring still slither around, and from where the trail headed, it sure looked like Oswald's bandits were at the center of it, so the MC nodded and said he got it. That's everything for now. No one knows if the capital's bandits snatched Aina's comrades, but their move style matches the crew that hit Oralia in the capital, so maybe the same mastermind is pulling the strings. Matsuzaki asked Aina if she'd stay in the capital with them, hunting for any sign of her comrades, then she shook her head and said she didn't want to be a burden. They swore they were based in the capital, so it was smooth sailing, plus they promised they'd step in and help. Help, she snapped, then swore she'd stay in the capital and hunt down every trace of her comrade. Oralia said it's settled, and the MC told her again, "It was great meeting you," while SVI stood right beside him, grinning like he'd just won. Aina stared at him and blurted, "By the way, what's that plush-looking thing?" I shot back, "It's not a toy, his name is SVI." She stared at him in total shock and blurted, "Wait, does he actually talk?" MC just shrugged, "Yeah, sure, he's our comrade, he'll explain everything on the way." Capital's guild, where power, secrets, and danger all collide. Reese shoved into the guild building and demanded that she spill everything she knew about the main character, anything at all. Then she flinched, apologized, and admitted she couldn't give it. He demanded details about the other adventurers, snapped in fury that he was a hero, and then, wait, did she actually get it? King Selbear himself was locked in on this guy, so she told him to cool off and reminded him that impossible stays impossible. He closed the distance and demanded she spill every secret right now, or he'd make sure she got crushed by the consequences. She trembled and said she couldn't bring herself to resort to violence. She told me he had no other option, then she leaned in and pushed like she had to say it out loud. Lagruz swooped in and demanded, "What are you doing?" and Fabris shot back. "He's the guy who faced that fake hero in the practical exam. Yeah, the opponent was Lagruz, right? He's Fabris, the sword hero, but the way he's hunting for answers is way too aggressive for a so-called hero." He paused for a beat, shook his head, and said it wasn't his business. The king is seriously worried about Matsuzaki Yuki, so he's digging up every scrap of info he can find. What if you and him team up? He got smoked by him in the exam, so yeah, he's probably burning with a grudge. Then why not corner him together? He grinned and asked if he really thought he could trap Matsuzaki by teaming up with someone just like him, then fired back, "Wait, did you mean someone like me?" He believed you could read a person's soul from how they swing a blade, straightforward steel, or a cut packed with pure malice. Fabris doesn't buy that the protagonist is a traitor, so he won't pick a fight with him. Then he hits hard by saying he's straight up disobeying the hero's order. Leggers insisted years back he told him to stop dead, and you could tell just by looking at his face. He's battered and bleeding, so why is he still trying to square up like this? Rage spit from his mouth as he cursed. He promised he'd step back for today, then pull the mask off this fake hero and show everyone who he really is. She thanked him for saving her and he cut in, "Don't thank me, just promise me this. If he ever threatens you again, you tell me right away." "No, I can't." "Why is he lurking around like that, snooping about Matsuzaki?" Hearing that the king is tied up in all this scares him to death, because he's heard Matsuzaki got accused of treason for. He tried playing the hero, but when the Demon King finally shows up, that hero title suddenly doesn't matter one bit. And Matsuzaki didn't have to fake being a hero for a second, something's seriously off. So it looks like he's gotta dig a little deeper into this too. MC jolted awake, and there were the girls right beside him. And SVI was sprawled on top of him, saying he couldn't move his body at all. His heart thumped as he stared at the damage. How in the world did this happen last night? With 3 people and 1 pet crammed into that last hotel room, things were starting to feel way too tight, so he pushed for splitting them up by getting rooms. Ine asked if this was their usual setup, men and women split into separate rooms. He quickly apologized, saying Oralia had told him she didn't need to stay with him because he didn't want her stuck feeling lonely. But Oralia shut that down and said renting 2 rooms would cost them way more. "Also, it's way more fun when we're all together, right?" He shot back with a grin. "Lively? Yeah, lively sounds perfect, but before he could even finish, Aina cut him off and said, "Hey, MC's the one renting the room, so I don't care, just don't start doing anything weird." "What was weird?" Matsuzaki pressed, and straight back she answered, "What was weird?" She couldn't even bring herself to admit it, then he just waved it off and said, "Okay." And they all should have gone to bed, and Svi leaned in to say good night, while the girls chimed right in too. Everyone said good night, and as the darkness rolled in, Ine suddenly heard something moving right behind her. She leaned over and blurted, "What are you doing? Your bed is right here, isn't it?" Oralia sat on the very spot where the MC had been sleeping. She said she just needed some night air, and Ine agreed, until she realized the window was on the opposite side. She confessed she was wiped out, then practically urged herself to hurry and hit the bed, and still she couldn't stop herself from asking why she was so damn nervous. So what's she cooking up in the dead of night, and why is she heading straight for Matsuzaki's? She shot back that it didn't look like excuses at all, no need to hide the truth. Honestly, it felt weirdly safe cuddling up next to him, so she slipped into his bed while he was still asleep, and when he didn't even stir, she finally admitted she'd shown her true nature. Then she climbed in too, laying down right beside MC and swearing she'd try that comfy bed herself, and when she froze in surprise, she blurted, "Wait, what are you doing?" She said she was only doing what she'd always done, and then she said it again. She said, but he loved her for real, so it didn't even matter, and when she demanded to know what he was basing it on, he had to answer. She shot back, furious, saying Matsuzaki kept sneaking in and unconsciously touching her breasts every single night, and then she demanded an answer again, unprompted, and again and again. She kept going because Matsuzaki's a total master of it. Even asleep, he somehow knows if it's right or wrong, and yeah, he touches her. Aina admitted she didn't fully grasp what she was saying, but her confidence was unreal, and she hated losing in competitions just as much. Then she teased, "So, doesn't she want to see which one our MC picks?" Oralia nodded along, and Aina added that even if she ended up losing, she shouldn't take it personally. Matsuzaki genuinely believed he never even saw this weird competition coming between them. In the end, even SVI showed up, and once he did, he crashed into a sleep, all squeezed tight from. Hands crowded in from every angle, pressing against her chest, and he realized with a jolt that Oralia had slipped inside again. He kept telling her over and over, "Don't go in without asking. If your right hand won't work, use your left." He glanced over and saw Aina sprawled on his left arm, and he couldn't shake the feeling. Why did she sneak in too? His stomach turned heavy, and then there was SVI right there, and he knew he should have been asleep by the. If you even shifted a tiny bit, every single person would snap awake. Yeah, like that. That's right. He's not some legendary sage who suddenly got god-tier power. He's just a stuck-in-the-middle creature caught between 2 brats. Trapped on this bed, he's been arrested, and he can't move an inch, no matter how badly he tries to get up. Eventually, he shuts his thoughts off, climbs into bed, and tells himself the next morning is gonna look like nothing ever happened. He bursts awake. The girls greet him with bright good mornings, and she asks, "Did you sleep well?" Anna grins and claims he totally didn't notice, but come on, he slept great. Right? He's stunned and blurts out what she means. Oralia snaps that pretending is pointless. His hands should already remember how he and Anna slept side by side. Anna jumps in too and asks which feeling he liked more. The MC blurts out, totally thrown off, so which one's better and which one's worse? They can't even figure it out, they're just different, but the sensation is so insanely good that it's fine either way. She asks, do you really think we'll be satisfied with that? And he nods like it's settled. She swore she wouldn't lose to Orlia, then taunted, he'll pick me, right? And he snapped back, yelling at them to stop yanking him into it because they had to smash breakfast fast and haul straight to the guild for the quest. He thought it through, and then they officially signed Aina up as a guild adventurer to put her strength to the test. They took on the quest to hunt monsters. Matsuzaki even muttered that elves are supposed to be deadly with a bow, but in this world, is it really the same? Aaliyah swore she'd heard that elves, those forest folks, were masters with a bow, and Bina immediately stepped up to show off every last bit of her full bow skill. MC blurted, this is magnificent, and said with that kind of skill she'd ace the guild's practical exam on the spot. Orlia followed up, no, it's downright amazing. And Ine nodded along, saying back in her village, everyone gets trained from childhood. MC blurted, are these monsters around here kind of weak? If only they could hunt better and come in bigger packs. But he didn't even finish because SVI cut in, then he'll gather the monsters. Matsuzaki blurted, can I actually do that? And SVI shot back, yeah, I feel the resonance. He uses the monster's own magic and tricks them into believing he's one of their kind. The group needs to come together, then the monsters start closing in fast and a glowing info window pops up. Wisp, level 5 monster skill. Ram *** attribute, fire and salamander level 6 monster skill. Light *** attribute, fire. Matsuzaki said, yeah, there are so many. Alright, let's see who's really strong, they pushed. Orlia nodded, and Aina chimed in with a bright, unstoppable kind of excitement. They kicked off the battle against the monsters. MC snapped, let's go. And somehow this hits different than it ever has. He claimed it's an attribute attack, so MC snapped back, wait, an attribute attack. Since becoming his master's subordinate, he's learned the magic ice water attribute move. Now he can unleash water attacks at will. Fire monsters get hit by water attacks and the power doesn't just rise, it doubles on impact. Suzuki grinned and said, yeah, it's good, and then if. Go for the fire monsters, wipe them out and you'll steamroll through fast. He slammed into the moment and blurted, it's true. You don't even have to lay a finger on the sword to still come out on top with it. With one savage blow, Ine whipped out her bow and started slinging arrows, right in the middle of a brutal fight with a. Aaliyah leaned in and blurted, they're both incredible. Come on, keep up, if you blink you're toast, so they'd better strike right now. She shut her eyes tight and with pure terror, swung her hand and smashed into the monster's face. She cracked her eyes open, then the monsters came crawling in on all sides, closing the world in. She said, with all of us, yeah, even we can take it slow and still run. One by one she caught sight of Aina and MC. Watch them smash into battle, throwing everything they've got at the monsters. After a while Matsuzaku started to. SVI said it was time to head back to the capital and Aina nodded fast, she was out of arrows. Then SVI admitted he'd burned through his mana and was starving. MC guessed they'd probably taken out around 1,000 as a team, and at this pace Aina's rank would shoot up fast. Aina just shrugged and said it wasn't really her, it was all Matsuzaki's power and even she couldn't feel reality anymore. Orlia didn't say a word. MC leaned in and asked what was wrong, and he'd never seen her look this lost before, so everyone snapped their attention to her. She went quiet, eyes drifting as if her mind had slipped somewhere else. MC finally leaned in and said, you're exhausted from hunting monsters all day. Ine said they shoved her into matching their pace, then quickly apologized as the pressure bore down on her. She blurted, it's nothing, like it didn't even faze her. Still buzzing with energy, MC quickly apologized and urged her to save that power for next time. Then they should head back. SVI tore after him and shouted, go home. Aina shot back that she just wanted to rinse the sweat off fast in the bath. Honestly, it's a thought that hits hard. Matsuzaki isn't the only one, Aina is too, and that's where it gets seriously intense. She's insanely strong and MC doesn't just benefit, he relies on her big time. Oswald's capital suddenly, yeah, Silly blurted out, hey, does it? Aina asked who the person she'd run into earlier in the castle and the forest was, and Orlia answered, I swear she looks like she's been in the hero Hardy's party. MC said he didn't really know her, and just as he started, she bulldozed right over him with an interruption. She snapped her ego down, apologized for being rude, and proudly introduced herself. Yep, the silly Galtier, because the way she moved, he could tell she wasn't just some girl. She was a born healer, and he said. She said, "What a wild coincidence," then told her friend Fabris to fix his awful reputation now, because he was literally about to leave, and she grabbed him mid-step and urged him that he should wait. She fell for him instantly, and the MC just stood there completely stunned. He blurted out what she said, the power that slammed the water-winged dragon into submission with one devastating blow, and his noble presence. She immediately tossed it aside and totally melted. The girls were stunned, and she begged to stay close to him, but he snapped no, told her to wait 1 minute, and then made it clear he didn't care what she thought of him. But he just couldn't match her feelings back, so she pressed him, demanding to know why, pouring out her love with raw intensity. And he told her that even if she believed it, when some near stranger blurted a declaration like that, it left him completely thrown, wondering if she even realized what she was doing. Rage flared in her eyes as she snapped no, and shut down his confession, especially from the so-called greatest beauty in the world, the hero's party's second most powerful brute. So yeah, who was he supposed to be? Everyone froze in pure shock. Matsuzaki leaned in and blurted, "So what did you do next?" With unmatched brains and a heart full of compassion, she could charm even mountains, seas, and towering ancient monsters, like a beauty so powerful it made 1,000 armies kneel. The three of them stayed frozen in shock. She pushed onward and snapped, "Cruel God." And then she admitted it, her own beauty wasn't a gift anymore, it was a weight. Matsuzaki snapped that he doesn't get any of it, no matter if she's supposedly the prettiest in the world or some kind of hero, he's having none of it. Silly blinked in shock. "Wait, what? A guy like that isn't interested." Ine said something was off about that woman, and Orlia snapped back, "Yeah, I feel it too, don't mess with her." MC said, "Yeah, I love power, so I just know if I'm into it, everyone else will be too, like that's a real thing." And then she totally botched the word she meant to say. Does she even know that? They scoffed, or is she really that stupid? The MC shot back that she probably didn't end up here by accident. Then he had no clue what she was after, and still, he demanded she just leave. She shot back that he was nothing but a total outrage, humiliating her with that ridiculous stunt, just like always. She shot a glare to the side, snapped loudly, and basically acted like either that blonde, ugly woman or some military girl from the guild was better than her. "Forget her, it's his eyes that are rotten." Orlia was beside herself, and Ine shot back, blazing with outrage that even at a first meeting you don't go saying stuff like that. Rage surged through him as he snapped that he could swallow insults all day, but he'd never let them humiliate anyone. Then he'd fire back that no matter how stunning she looked, a woman with no dignity was instantly unattractive, so she went red with rage and she screamed back at him. Did he really just call her completely unattractive? He snapped loud and clear that honestly, face to face, she doesn't even come close to being comparable. They were shook by his words, then Esili grabbed his hand, yanked him toward her, and dared him to touch her, saying he'd change his mind the second he did. He should. Forget those two, drop them and stay with her. He doesn't need to hide or hesitate. She'll teach him exactly what it means to be with a grown woman. He shoved her hand aside and barked loud and clear for her to stop. Already, she grabbed his hand and snapped that punching a woman is pure cruelty. He admitted he was cruel, but he'd never once lifted a hand to a woman, and he still hadn't hit one, and she snapped back, shocked, shouting that she understood nothing at all. He told everyone, straight up and loud, that there was zero feminine charm in her. She didn't deserve the title woman at all. He snarled in a terrifying voice that she'd better tell Fabris that the next time he spots him, he'll kill him on the spot. Fear hit her hard from his words, then she blurted that the world's most beautiful girl, Yuki, was about to leave, but he only looked. Orlia stiffened on the spot, and I demanded, "Why did you freeze?" She looked genuinely puzzled. They fired back and said it was fine, then they bolted to another part of the city. She thanked him and told him he'd stood up for her when she couldn't even speak. Then he asked, "Wait, you mean what happened earlier?" He said her name straight to her and told her she didn't have to overthink it, because this time he wasn't guessing, he was telling the truth. Seriously. Calling her a hero is total madness. She doesn't need that label shoved on her like that. He couldn't stop staring at her seriously, then clocked that she was lost in thought, and whatever crossed her mind looked like it was hurting her. She snapped those words at him again. Usually she grins at everything and shrugs it off, so why did that hit her so hard? And boom, they burst into the guild. Just as Maria spotted them, she froze and demanded to know what they were doing here. As he finally showed up this time, he declared, "I'm here to report on the monster extermination quest." She smiled politely and told him to flip his guild ID card over, because the number of monsters he's destroyed gets logged there automatically. He shoved the ID card into her hands and said he thought it was just a piece of paper, until he realized it did something more, and she shot back that they swore it was the newest ceramic tech. She stared at the screen and blurted, "What are those numbers? 1,000 pieces? That's not normal." He couldn't believe it either. If you're really taking down monsters effectively, then why are you stuck on a number like that? She said that for just one day, that's totally not normal. He definitely crushed the record and even pushed his limits higher too. Frank said he wiped out so many on purpose to make this happen, then she said. Then she'd whip up a fresh guild ID and he'd demand the old one back, so he spun around, shouted for Orlia and ordered her to show her ID too, but she flat out refused. He told him she hadn't wiped out nearly as many monsters as he and Aina. Her rank was more than enough, she didn't need to have wiped out as many monsters as they did. So pushing her rank higher was pointless, she'd be better off staying right where she was at rank D. The protagonist spun around and demanded, "So what do we do then?" And Maria admitted, "I'm as lost as you are, I've never seen this before either." And yeah, if they say no to the promotion, the rules lock them in at their current rank, but even after they get promoted, they can still grab lower-ranked missions, so refusing basically changes nothing. He asked for a little time to think and she told him, "You don't have to decide today, but if you don't finish the paperwork in 3 days, you'll lose the right to that promotion." He started to leave, told everyone 3 days was plenty, and even begged them to postpone his promotion. He called her by her name and told her they needed to get out of there, change the scenery now. They stormed out and he demanded, "Why did you refuse the promotion?" Orlia shot him an apology, begging not to be a burden, then he cut her off and told her she had nothing to apologize for. Because he didn't blame her, he just had to know why. She said today's hunt was nothing like. She felt it wasn't even in the same league, those insults were petty, but he stepped in and defended her like he meant it. She tried to answer but nothing came out, she couldn't even respond. Sure, she doesn't have to beat them, but it still feels like she doesn't deserve the same wins they're walking around with right now. He threw out an apology, saying he finally understood her, then admitted it was all his fault, because he realized it only made things worse for her when he saw how that turned out for them. You can totally feel yourself slipping into that dark mood, and sure, it makes sense, but drowning in self-doubt is dangerous. She apologized and admitted she knows full well that she's not doing this the right way. But she didn't finish the sentence and Aina froze for a second, then she asked, "So you're saying you don't have the strength?" So she's aiming for a C rank, right? If she actually clears that C rank job, wouldn't that give them solid proof to let her pass? No question. He backed her plan and asked, "Why not try it for real?" Aurelio's smile faded fast. "Wait, isn't that dangerous?" He asked her point blank if she could handle it by herself, like proving right there that she deserved that promotion. He'd stay close, ready to step in if anything went wrong, but she was determined to crush the C-rank task all by herself. Even without a quest, she could step out anytime and start trading blows with monsters. No pressure, no doubts, just pure chance to test her strength without looking back. "I figured she'd be swamped with the guild exam back then, so we just split up separately," and she nodded, asking, "Isn't this perfect timing? Once I get my ID, the two of us can train." If she hesitated, she could easily leap ahead of her in rank, would. Orlia's face tightened and she flat out said that admitting defeat like that would be terrible. She even smiled while praising the right attitude, then added that if he really wanted to go up against her, he'd better at least have a little. Stubborn to the core, she smiled and swore she understood it all, and that she'd handle it no matter what. The MC cut in, saying, "Then it's set, let's prep for tomorrow and rest." And even though she tried to shrug it off, the fatigue hit hard from that weird woman tied to the Hero Hearts party, but she still clenched her resolve and vowed to give it her all. The very next day, they marched straight to the goblin nest. She stared at that swarm of monsters, worry twisting her face, and blurted, "Please tell me nothing bad is going to happen, right?" A monster lunged at her while fear hit like lightning. Then he slammed in front of it and shouted that she was moving way too slow. She had no reason to fear some C-rank nobody, and that's exactly what he told himself. While Anna was grinding through the guild's practical exam, they snuck in to test drive a C-rank quest. It wasn't official, but he figured this was the perfect way to measure her strength. Then he blared Aurelia. He warned her she was getting ambushed from behind, and the moment she felt it, she snapped her head around and hurled herself to the side. She fought back against the monster's onslaught with a terrified grimace, shouting that its attacks were moving way too fast. Then she couldn't stop the momentum, she could. He told her to know exactly when to counterattack, then claimed everything was fine. She snapped up the block perfectly and she decided to just trust it. The monster lunged at her and panic cracked her voice as she blurted, "What do I do?" As expected, she was instantly pinned down. He defended himself, spun toward her, and told her to calm down. She fights back only when doubt tightens in her chest, so that's exactly why the outcome flips. She has to strike first, like right now. If she wants to stop them, she can't hesitate. Before they closed the distance, she nodded fast and said she'd try, and then tore through two monsters at the same time, leaving them in ruins. Yuki lit up and praised her, then said, "That meeting him proved she was anything but weak." She rode into the capital all by herself, so yeah, this is where everything starts to go sideways. She should at least have the skills an ordinary person would have. Adventurer, now her enemy isn't goblins anymore. Right in front of her, yet she can't even find herself, swallowed whole by the doubts pounding in her heart. He's sure she'll finally see the truth, smash through it, and come out stronger, so she wiped out a few more goblins, and then he casually asked, by the way, if she'd finally gotten used to that new sword they just bought, and when Aurelia tried it, her eyes lit up. "This one's awesome." She even said it didn't wear her out nearly as much as the old blade. He said this one is built with a magic stone inside, so it tears through monsters way better than the mass-produced stuff, and it's not just for. She took his word and pushed for something deeper, because the old man swore this masterpiece was the one to chase. He thought he might have to jump in if things went sideways, but when it mattered, it didn't, so he just activated the magical. She glanced at it and the thought hit her. She didn't even realize it yet, but the enemies were closing in. She was getting even stronger and growing fast too, but even for her she was right now. These goblins were still a pain to deal with, so why did they hand this out as a C-rank quest? He didn't tell her, because here's the truth, this quest was built for a whole group, not one lone fighter, even if she can take it on by herself, and once she figures that out, her confidence comes roaring back. Then later, they run straight into even tougher goblin stormtroopers. He stared at it and thought, like clockwork, are they really too much for her to handle alone? But if she can take them down, then nothing else matters. That'll pump her full of confidence. Then he calls up SVI and asks if he can bait them out one at a time. He shot forward toward a goblin, snapped out a command, and yanked him along to follow. And dragged him straight into Aurelia. Then this monster charged in, swung its mace, and smashed her with a brutal hit. But he slammed in anyway, and she dodged at the last second. Then she spotted a gap. She crashed through the monster's defense and ended it in one brutal swing of her sword. Then he hauled in the next two goblins. And right then, she swung her sword and cut one of them down instantly. Right after that, she tore down the second monster. And with a shaky breath, she told him everything was okay, because the fear finally vanished. A system window snapped into view in front of her eyes, blasting the message. She'd acquired the body enhancement skill. She triggered the skill and then gasped, because raw power started boiling inside her body. With a tiny smile, the protagonist asked, "So I can use skills too?" And the answer hit like pure hype. She's really becoming more and more trustworthy. Then Aurelia stepped in, met a fresh goblin, and smashed his sword strike dead in its tracks. She smiled softly and said, like it was inevitable, that their hits now felt weak as paper. If that's the case, she'll wipe the floor with them, no sweat at all. He leaned in from the side and figured that this way. She didn't just fight goblins, she crushed them, mastered every move, and proved her skills without a doubt. She proved she was worth a whole army on her own. Then she kept crushing every fresh reinforcement the moment it hit. At the end, she wiped out every last goblin in that nest, all by herself, gone. Then she snapped around to him. "Tell me there aren't any more, right?" He stood beside her and nodded like, "Yeah, it looks like they're all gone." SVI swooped along next to him and said, it felt like the goblin menace vanished, like it never existed, so MC called her name, told her the truth. This quest was meant for a C-rank crew in the first place. Her eyes went wide, completely shocked. She told him she could finish it by herself, and he nodded, saying she clearly had skills far beyond average. C-rank, so yeah, no way she'll dare say she's refusing the promotion, right? She blurted out a loud yes, and basically credited everything to him. He said the whole point was simple. She finally cracked a smile again and lit up. "And that's awesome, so tell me, is she finally ready to rip back to the city?" After all that, they finally marched into the capital, and straight up to the guild. Maria snapped her name and asked if she'd finally changed her mind, and Aurelia nodded, telling him that because of his help, she'd found a little more confidence. She snapped, asking how they managed to flip her mind so fast, and he just shrugged, saying he didn't pull anything special. He let her tear into the goblin nest by herself. Then she froze when she heard what he said and demanded, "What did you just say?" "It was a C-rank goblin extermination job, no official stamp needed, right?" She pushed the question straight at me like we could just walk in and start swinging. The C-rank Goblin Extermination quest. He jumped at it and asked if there was one posted on the board. She shook her head and... So there are 0 C-rank Goblin Extermination quests. Yeah, exactly, it's a Goblin Extermination and nothing else. It was the captain's blunder, and that's why this quest has been stuck for ages. She swallowed her pride and apologized, because the person in charge was about to get reprimanded. He got it all wrong. This wasn't some random job, it was a B-ranked group quest. His jaw dropped at the news. Turns out this wasn't a C-ranked job at all, it was a full-on B-ranked quest, and the worst part, it was for a whole team. She said it with that serious tone. She knows he's abnormally strong, but taking on a B-ranked group quest by himself, that's straight up insane. So she called Orelaya and straight asked, "Can you hear me at all?" She was still reeling and blurted, "Did I just do something incredible?" He nodded, convinced she might be even stronger than the hero himself now. After a while, Aina yanked open the conversation in the room, calling Yuki over and demanding what he was up to, while Yuki carefully poured liquid from one test tube straight into the next. And he said it was called alchemy. He'd only just cracked the technique, but he hadn't gotten a chance to use it yet until he found. Maybe the stuff we grabbed for that collection quest can be turned into something way bigger. He fired up his very first alchemy skill and demanded to know how they pulled it off. He nailed a level 1 potion on his first try and said it was working, and Orelaya was blown away. She couldn't believe you could make the kind of potion they sell in the store with your own hands. Why doesn't he use holy water in her village? Holy water is the secret ingredient for crafting elixirs, but it's so rare it feels cursed, and even climbing to the brutal mountain's top doesn't guarantee you'll ever get your hands on it. So he leaned in and promised, "If you need holy water, I'll get you some," and that's when I realized he wasn't just any guy, he was a water dragon or not, it wasn't some treasure. He could grab more whenever he wanted, so he even said he'd be fine taking just a little. He rocketed up to the flask and started pouring holy water straight from his mouth into it. Orelaya stared at the mouthful of holy water he'd managed to conjure, shocked at how much he'd created, and when she finally tested it, she swore it looked just like plain old water. The protagonist threw the materials together, then slammed them with the alchemy skill and lit the whole thing up. He managed to craft a level 2 glowing potion, then froze, because it shimmered even brighter than last time. He praised the owner for it and said that. But the alchemist he knew always made everything hit harder. Maybe he should go for a couple more tries. He grabbed 2 test tubes and snapped, "Exactly, this takes practice." Then he leaned in, "If you start experimenting, you might cook up brand new recipes." He unlocked it and then he slammed the skill on again, sparking a massive blast and creating a level 3 radiant potion. Then he grinned and said it looked even more incredible. Aina snatched the potion, then blurted out in shock, "That's stronger than the last one. How could it be this easy to make potions so insanely expensive?" It was wild. He built it all with nothing but the supplies he'd hunted down himself, and Orelaya couldn't help but grin. "Look, if you become a potion merchant, you can rake in serious money." He mulled it over, admitted he was way too lazy to sell it himself, and decided he'd let merchants handle it instead. He'd just need to figure out how next. You take care of the mining and the synthesis, and if you strike a deal with the merchant guild, they'll handle the selling for you. Ine told us in her village the elven healers raked in massive profits, because not only did they sell medicines to nearby towns, but their elven cures were so famous they could wipe out any illness. "Say there's even an elixir of immortality," he blurted, sounding honestly shocked. "Is that really possible?" She asked back with a slightly confused smile like, well, of course they would. She doesn't know the full details, but in the elven village there's a secret recipe for an elixir of immortality, hidden from everyone except a select few, and that's why greedy schemers and demons keep showing up to ruin their lives. MC pressed him, "So you really mastered alchemy? Could you pull off something like this?" SVI smirked and said, "I've seen a real great alchemist do exactly that." But this happened thousands of years back. He burst into laughter and said, "Come on, those stories are just myths and legends." Later on, Ligris strode through the city streets by the castle walls. Oswald. 2 men sprinted beside him, slamming after a girl in shackles, and they herded her into a dead end where she's asking now like there's a way out, but can she really escape? She forced them to chase, and he has no clue what was racing through her mind when she bolted. But don't let her get cocky. She's not making it to the elven village alive, not after all that. She has to slip back to the dungeon quietly. She won't make it through next time. Then he burst into the alley and demanded to know why they were there. They didn't look friendly at all. Then the bandits clocked him and warned, cold as steel, that he'd shown up at the worst possible time. That's what they do. Important people gave a direct order: drag that girl back, no questions. With a calm face, he said the city's been crawling with shady guys lately, and he'd heard the rumors straight from the streets. So they're one of them, huh? Who told them to pull this off? They swore they wouldn't talk, so if he wants answers, he'll have to ask his sword. Lagruz yanked the sword from behind his back and swore he'd strike just like that right then. They bolted straight at him, weapons blazing in their hands. She screamed that she wished him death, and warned that he'd regret it the moment he tried to stop them. They slammed in a flurry of rapid-fire punches. He slammed their attacks aside, and they blurted out, "So you're really the strongest adventurer in the whole kingdom." One of them lunged in from behind, but he whipped his sword around in a blur and roared that they'd never pull it off. A clash of steel pulled the townsfolk into the streets, and the bandits snapped, "If the guards show up, we're done for." They bolted in fear and shouted that he was lucky, yeah, lucky now, but he couldn't let that fool him because this wasn't the end. They bolted to safety. She threw him a grateful look and he waved it off. Everything was fine now, and he'd deal with the heartbreaks from here. The elf pleaded with him to rescue her friends from the castle, and then said they were trapped in the underground dungeon, so he demanded to know why they ended up there in the first place. She thrust a tiny stone into his hand and told him she had one too, only she didn't finish the sentence. She fired off the request and told him to deliver it to her friends. In the elven village, he has to blurt out that everything's in terrible danger, and he needs to race back with the report right now. "No way, this is already too late," he muttered, eyes full of worry, trying to figure out what was happening with Yuki and what the king was cooking up. Still, he prayed that this gnawing anxiety wouldn't turn into the real thing. Meanwhile, inside Oswald's castle, Cerber burst out loud, demanding, "Tell me, did you catch that escaped elf yet?" The guard nodded, grim-faced, and admitted that Leggers, damn it, had clocked the pursuers and sent them scrambling. He snarled that they were idiots, then slammed the past failure with Princess Aurelia into the table. This was just another blunder, and demanded, "Can't you catch even one measly mouse?" The guard froze and asked what he wanted done. He threw his hand up and shouted that they still needed a ton of elves, then ordered the elf hunt to start. He slammed out of his office and didn't look back. Then a shadowy monster lunged out of nowhere and snapped that things were getting brutal. He stared it down and shot back. He knew those bandits could pull off something this vile, so using his own soldiers openly wasn't an option. Yeah, it sucked, but he'd have to let the bandits do the dirty work. The creature shrugged off the details and told him the real point was simple. He'd keep his promise no matter what, and yes, it would take time, but every one of his demands would be met. The creature told him they had to gather more elven mana, and when he stared it down and asked, "Why so much? Did you really need all of that power to crush?" Other countries warned that demons' power was untouchable, no match, no equal. They said an ancient evil dragon, sealed away by the gods, was the key, and to break it free you'd have to unleash massive, world-shaking magical energy. Cerber leaned in and asked, "So, is everything okay about that whole thing?" "Yeah." The creature burst out laughing, called him a greedy fool, and smugly said, "Sure, I already know all about it." He was desperate to uncover the secret behind the elven immortality elixir, and once he heard the deal, he nodded, because with that potion, even a ruler with no heirs could claim the throne and stay in power forever. People say he'll step in later to help track them down, but first he has to prove he's loyal to the demons. He swore that if his wish came true, he'd prove his devotion, no matter what. He had to buy him a little more time right as the creature started fading, and he snapped that he didn't have much time left because he was waiting for his sincere. He strode to the window and blurted that the tension was spiking. Now they had to make the next move fast, before Ligres and his fake hero turned into a major roadblock. Soon enough, out on the Calrun plains, our hero and the crew threw down for real, against a level 12 red ogre that wouldn't go down. Ina blurted out loud and fearless, "I'll pull his focus, now strike the weak spot." She unleashed a storm of shots right into the monster's shoulder, then it whipped around toward her. And she blared it out loud, she had to. "Finish him fast." Aurelia flashes a confident grin and says, "Don't worry, I've got this." She charged right up to the monster and slashed the ogre's arm clean off with one brutal swing of her sword. Then she shouted that now she couldn't land a hit with that clubs. Then, right after, she launched into a jump again and shouted at the top of her lungs that his sights locked onto her left hand, and he praised her like it was something only he could see. She blurted out that they needed to see what her training could do, right now. She leapt into the air, swung her sword, and body enhancement skill ***. He rammed the sword straight into the monster's head and tore it down for good. With this attack, Aina praised her, then she fired back saying, with a smug little smile, he made it clear it all happened because of him. He said for a monster like that, they usually bring an entire squad, but she crushed it almost alone and Fabrice Kane just sat there stunned like, that's seriously impressive. He yelled at them right out loud saying he finally caught him, he's a traitor and he's the king's enemy and today you will beat him for sure. He stared at them totally baffled and blurted out, so what do you want here now? With a smug grin, he told everyone he didn't need to pretend, then he kidnapped the third one and started dragging them along. So the girl from the Velar Empire's royal line, right? They were totally thrown by that. And she snapped back that he hadn't kidnapped her at all, bandits had nearly sold her off to the kingdom. He was stunned by the accusation, then pointed out that she was the one denying it herself. He grabbed her right at that weak spot, didn't he? So he listened close, real close, while the merciful king spoke. He'd forgive him if he handed over the princess, and he'd better do it right now because Silly stood beside him, stuck her tongue out, and demanded he obey her dear one. The MC, still smiling calmly, told them to go ahead and try, then Aurelio's eyes went wide with shock as he blurted out loud, what are you even saying? He warned her, if you fight back, don't blame me, and she got the message. And then he admitted he forgot, this ogre sprawled on the ground was actually. Not long ago he got crushed by her, and the shock hit him so hard he couldn't even process it. He snapped, confused, what did you just say? Because there was no way anyone would believe him. Such nonsense, he snapped, if he wanted to scare them he'd need something way more believable, and she said, even my dear one has to push hard if we're going to beat this monster. He felt it was pure mockery, then she stepped right behind him and said he'd get his hands full with her in just a moment. They both yanked their swords free, and he barked that they were about to find out exactly what the princess could do. He sprinted at her, swung his sword hard, yet it still missed her. He literally leaped sideways. Right after that, Aurelia snapped her sword up and yelled that it was her turn now. She charged in swinging hard, but Fabrice braced the hit and worriedly told her it couldn't be. He couldn't possibly miss the distance, could he? Yeah, just an accident, and then he started unloading a flurry of quick punches, yanking the moment with loud, urgent questions. So how's she doing? Nay watched the fight from the sidelines, gasping because every time he struck, she just swatted his attacks aside like it was nothing. She laughed it off for a second, then clearly worried, shouted at him to stop messing around and hurry up and finish. He lunged at her, snapped his sword into a swing, and roared that he was a hero, because defeat was never going to happen. He'd drop her with that single blow, right as she surged forward with her body enhancement skill. He counterattacked hard and smacked the sword right out of his hands. Fear hit him like a truck. She thrust her sword toward him and declared he was beaten, then smirked like she'd make him answer the question, keep going or admit defeat. Barbas, eyes wide with terror, lifted his hands, threw in the towel, and blurted that he finally understood everything. Yuki stepped up and asked if he could spill how it was going with rebuilding his reputation, and he stared back at her like, wait, what? And demanded what he was even talking about, like, right now. He said he'd explain it instantly. No matter how hard he tried to scare him, it didn't land, and if he actually goes and kills him, he's headed to be the greatest criminal ever. Right after he kills a hero, then they execute him, so he's got to stop himself. He burst into loud laughter and shouted that he lost the fight, but the win is still his. Then he stared at the idiot with a confused, baffled look, and he's sure it's some kind of hint from someone, but he has no clue who, so he blurts the name and swears he knows what it means, like the truth is right there in his bones. So he can intimidate the king and wipe away all his sins, right? Who's going to stop him now? He panicked at what was happening and swore this time he'd stick to his word. Then he got loud, refused to go along, and snapped that he was done believing any of those words. They tried to pin Aurelius's kidnapping on him, right? He shot back that it was the king's or. The protagonist jabbed a finger at him and snapped, say it out loud in front of everyone, and then he cut himself off mid-sentence. He is a who. He's got that kind of pull, right? He said, voice shaking, that if he made this move, the king would watch his authority and trust crumble, and then the heroes would fall apart. With a stone-cold face, he said he didn't care, like it was obvious. It's all true, right? Then he laid it out like the rules of the world, 2 choices only, die or die in society. You've got to pick what he likes most and do it fast. Aina noticed Aurelia drifting in her thoughts, snapped her name and demanded, what happened? She craned her head up and blurted, red smokes choking the sky over the capital. Then she squinted again and muttered, that doesn't look like fireworks, it's wrong somehow. Silly stared at it too, then called out to him right as he was about to speak, so Fabris cut in and agreed, saying it was they. He grabbed the smoke for emergencies and then locked in on the wild truth. It was red. And he grinned and said, "All right, this is where it gets wild, because that puff of smoke, it's an emergency signal and it means trouble is already here. And that red flare is the warning sign of a demon invasion. Sure, they look like monsters, but there's something even worse about them. Even more terrifying, one demon wiped out an entire principality all by itself. Which hits first, those demons torch the capital, or he storms in and topples the king. He has to decide what he wants most, then the fight gets delayed and he better stay sharp because if he slips up, the demons will tear him apart." Ine called him over and asked what they were gonna do next, and Orlia, eyes wide with worry, said, "If we're right, this city is." MC was in real danger. He snapped that he didn't care about the king or the heroes, but then he had to, and he wanted to protect innocent people of the city. No matter what, you can't just walk out and leave the capital in danger, so the mission is crystal clear. They've got to reach that place fast, and they've got to do it together at the exact same time. A horde of demons stormed the city and came straight for them, trying to kill everyone in sight. Attacked the people fleeing for their lives, and the old man stood there, right when it was about to get worse. He panicked the second a monster swooped out of the sky straight at him. Ligresse screamed for help and then tore into the monster, slashing it down with his sword. He spun around and barked that he had to bolt. From here quickly he sprinted, and before he could breathe, D was closing in and the room felt like it was swallowing him. He stared them down and snapped that they. Yuki's crew surged up one by one, backing him hard until they finally cut down the monster. He blurted loud and urgent, "Are you okay?" and they'd help too. He blurted out his name in shock, then shouted a huge, loud thank you for saving him. Then without wasting a second, they tore into the demons and started cutting them down. Nearby, Ligresse blurted out loud, demanding to know if there was anybody who had. Still, they never got out in time. Now free adventurers are here to help everyone evacuate, and he shouted, calling his name. He blared, "What's happening in the city?" and then he snapped that demons and monsters had torn in from the sky out of nowhere. They kept slaughtering monsters, but their ranks never shrank, like the whole place was summoning more reinforcements the second they fell. He stood right beside him and said, "As long as we haven't crushed the demons, nothing changes." He nodded like it might be true, then paused because the demons weren't here anymore. They shot off toward the castle and the protagonist blurted, "So the king's the target, then we hit the castle." He grabbed him, voice shaking, and asked if he was really about to battle the demons all by himself. He stared down the castle with deadly seriousness and warned them that if they didn't strike at the heart of the king's rule, this land would crumble and everyone living here would perish. Ligresse could read him like a book. He had to get through this at any cost, and when she asked for forgiveness, it broke something in him. It admitted he must have been totally wrong about what he actually had on hand. He stared back at the memories and realized it the moment he got beaten by him, and the truth was clear. His straight sword wasn't used out of malice. On top of that, he realized the heroes were hunting for answers about him, so he decided to dig up the truth first himself. But the more he dug in, the uglier it got: crushing taxes, chokehold laws for the citizens, and shadowy, suspicious figures that kept tightening the net on security, until his distrust of the king hardened into something solid. He spun around and shot, "She's from the elven village, right?" Ine nodded. Then he thrust the stone into her hands, the very one he'd gotten earlier from the girl back in the city. She couldn't believe it. Absolute shock hit her like a wave. He told her this was their village's sign and that he'd just barely, by pure accident, saved an elf in the city. Then she demanded he go tell all her friends back in the village. Elf burst out of the castle's underground dungeon and yelled that her other comrades were trapped in there. Their village was on the brink of disaster. If they didn't move right now, it would be over before they knew it. A faint ache clung to her face as she stared, and then she blurted, "Turns out I'm stuck in this city and I have to save." The MC rushed up to her, demanded she hold on for a second, and bluntly said that letting her go solo in this chaos would be pure madness. She said, worried as her hands shook, that if the monsters hit the dungeon again, she wouldn't have time to finish. Then he snapped at her to calm down. He got what she felt, but they needed a game plan, so SVI shot up beside him and promised he'd help too. Then he said they should split into two. Orlia and she are heading for the underground dungeon, while he and SVI are rushing straight to the king and the demons. The girls shot her worried looks and insisted the three of them should head straight into the demons. She nodded and agreed. He couldn't shake the worry for her comrades. Stopping those monster reinforcements mattered more, so he snapped that both of them needed to listen to him closely right now. To keep the city breathing, we have to wipe out the demons first, but we can't leave her comrades behind either, not when we can save them right now. Keep your eyes on one task and everything else slips away in time, so they've got to split up, tackle both jobs at once, and team up fast to rescue her comrades. Orlaya asked, but if it's just me, can I really handle it? Aina leaned in and said, you mean the same Aina who just beat the hero? Yuki nodded, grinned sharp, exactly, and now you're more than ready to back her up. She buckled down, nodded, and told him, I'll do whatever I can, just give me a way to help. She warned him, if anything happens, don't go doing something reckless. She didn't even get to finish because he jumped in and swore it'd all be fine. If he's really that legendary sage, then of course he can handle the demons, right? Ligresse snapped his head up and warned them that monster reinforcements were closing in fast, then stared at it and demanded, where are they even coming from? The two of them had to move fast. They de-stall everyone right here, and they both agreed. Nene warned them to be even more careful. He sprinted for the castle and they snatched up their weapons. He slammed his voice out loud, declaring they would. One step more and he surged into the fight, swinging that massive sword and dropping them one by one. The protagonist fired off the divine protection skill, then charged straight into the demon battle. He said, yep, just like I thought. They wouldn't back down that easily. Ledger stood beside him and snapped, if we can shove them back just a little. Would be a chance. SVI, grinning and shouting, insisted the master could hand it to him. Then he surged into his true form with. That terrified him, but he still kept his cool and told everyone not to fear, because this dragon is fighting on their side. Dragon tore into the air with a savage blast of fire and finished him off, killing. A bunch of demons lurked nearby, and he rushed over, called the owner, and told him that he should hop onto his back and he'll carry him straight to the heart of the castle. He even sounded a bit shocked, like, trust me, it'll be way faster from the air. He's putting everything on his shoulders. Then he leaps onto Svi's back, shouts Ligresse, and tells him the city's residents are his to handle, so he needs to hold them off until he takes care of the demons. Confusion hit him for a moment, then he nodded, agreed, and warned, I've got to be careful. The two of them ripped through the sky toward the castle, while he stayed behind. He stood there, fixed his gaze on him, and declared, I'm counting on you, don't let me down. He shot straight to the castle, and SVI grilled the owner could he craft it. He charged straight into the castle, stared it down, and blurted, whoa, this place looks built like a fortress. Can he pull it off? He flashed a grin, said everything was fine, and swore he could handle it with pure confidence in his strength. He shot straight into the city, rammed the wall with his body, and smashed it to pieces. Then they spotted the demons right beside the king inside his office, and total shock hit them hard at what just happened. An MC strode right up to them and dropped with a sharp grin that it was crazy ironic. He honestly thought he'd never set foot here again. He went totally wide-eyed the moment he spotted him, then blared his name at the top of his lungs.